The time is now 6 p.m. Our regular City Council meeting for June 9, 2020 is now in session. First on the agenda is Councilmember Brown will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Thank you and good evening. Lord, 2020 has been tough. You've given us a lot of challenges. But as we all know, with the challenge comes opportunities. Help us choose the right opportunities and help us lead our city smartly and into the future. Also, let our city staff know that our appreciation for all they do and that our police and first responders have our support of council, staff, and the citizens. It's very important in this challenging time, to say the least. Lord, in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Okay, first is a presentation regarding the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association Excellence Award. Ms. Yulhorn?
That's a lot of words, huh? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor. There's Dr. Brown out. Wherever you went. Council, I'm Melissa Yulhorn, Library Director, and I'm here tonight to tell you a little bit about an award the library recently won. Also, we're not going to do any kind of presentation tonight, but I did bring the plaque because I wanted to show it off. This is for the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association Award of Excellence in Library Service. So I want to let you know that this past December, the library submitted an application packet to the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association for their Achievement and Excellence in the Libraries Award. The award is given by TMLDA to public libraries that can show excellence in 10 key service areas. This is the second time that we've applied for this award. You may remember last year, for the first time ever, we applied and were conferred the award. In late February of this year, just pretty much right in time for everything to shut down, we did get notification that we again qualified and won the award for 2019. We are one of only 53 libraries in the state who were awarded this. The application process looks at 10 key areas of library service. These are areas of service that libraries should be striving to provide to their communities, and this set of 10 service responses is something that they look at every year. Going through the whole application packet would, of course, take way too much time, but I did want to mention a couple of highlights from our application. We did add a few enhancements to our services in 2019. One of them being that we were able to put equipment and software and payment processors in place so that we could offer online credit card payment ability through customers' library accounts. This also makes it so that customers can pay for printing in the library at our kiosk, and they don't just have to keep putting nickels and dimes into the little machine. Oops, sorry. A second enhancement last year was we launched a brand new website in the spring of 2019. The website uses the same platform as the city's website. It's easy to navigate, and it's made content management for our staff much more efficient. But probably one of the more exciting enhancements last year was the development of a digital library card. It is a limited access card, and it's for online resources only. It's also a perfect solution for students who need access to resources but might not be able to get to the library and actually get a regular library card. Sometimes their parents aren't available to sign for a card in person, and a lot of times students can't get to the library because Our library is not located in the middle of a lot of residential area, so you have to drive pretty much to get to our library, and that sometimes creates a barrier for student access. So we added this digital card option, and it led to one of our biggest outreach efforts last year. We issued digital library cards to students at both district high schools, the junior highs, and one of the intermediate schools. In 8 days of campus visits at the beginning of the school year last year, our librarians were able to issue 613 digital cards to students in those facilities that did not have them. One of the nice side effects of this card we saw this year, once the library shut down, people weren't able to access and come inside to get library cards, but they were able to apply for this card online. And we've been giving out cards throughout our entire closure, adding a lot of new customers, and they now have the ability to take advantage of our e-books, e-audiobooks, and all of our online resources. So even though we were closed, this digital card initiative was very helpful for the customers who couldn't get into the library. We also collaborated with SCUC ISD in a couple of other ways. We had SCUC Day at the Library, which was an initiative put together by our library, the Universal City Library, and the school district. The school district really wanted to encourage their students to use their public libraries during the summer to keep reading. So they agreed to do events with both of our libraries, and the principals, their administrative staff, their teachers, and their librarians came to the libraries during the summer and participated in an event with us so they could see their students during the summer and to help encourage that reading throughout the summer. The other thing that we did with them last year was the SCUC ISD University. That's a program the district puts on each year for their educators at the beginning of the school year. And this is actually the second time that we've participated in this event. Our youth services librarian, April Toman, presented sessions to the teachers on how the public library and the schools can work together to help students have a successful school year. Some other notable collaborative efforts throughout last year, one of them was our What the Tech program that we had over at the Cibolo YMCA. Their new YMCA building includes a small library and a meeting space, and since we provide library services to Cibolo residents, our librarians worked with their staff to provide a monthly tech program at their location. We started this in late 2019, and unfortunately the pandemic sort of shut us down before we could get very many of these under our belt, but we're hoping to start those up again. We also began working last year with Parks and Public Affairs to provide content to the Schertz Parks Recreation and Fun Guide. The fall 2019 issue marked the debut of library content in this magazine, and we're hoping to keep moving forward with that. And of course, programming is huge for us. The library offers many programs for our community, including tech help, story times, book clubs, holiday programs, science and art programs, craft programs, self-improvement programs, and much, much more. In 2019, we provided 573 programs total with an attendance of close to 19,000 people. This is a 12% increase over our 2018 attendance. It was a very busy year. I especially want to take this time to express my thanks to our library staff. Their creativity and hard work and their dedication is what actually makes our library one of excellence. A special thanks goes out to our librarians, April, Lizzie, and Natalie. They're the people who are tasked with creating and carrying out much of this program that's been recognized with this award. So I know April, I saw April and Lizzie. Did Natalie make it tonight? No? But shout out to both of you for that. And any other library staff that made it tonight? No? Thank you for letting me have a few minutes to let you know what we've been up to.
No,
If
thank
anybody
you.
has-
Thank you and congratulations. Enhanced services that you provided, innovative ideas, and the creativity actually is a testament to this award. Thank you very much for what you provide our community.
Okay.
Council, any questions? All right.
No questions? Okay. All right. And we're going to be adding it to our trophy wall. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have an action item, resolution number 20R59, consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving the 2020 recipients of the Hal Baldwin Scholarship. Ms. Gonzalez?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we are excited to be here tonight to be able to present the recipients for this year's scholarship. But before we get to the actual presentation, we are asking for council approval of this resolution, which will approve the funds for the distribution for this year's recipients. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we'll do a presentation after approval of the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Council, floor is open for discussion. Is there a motion to approve resolution number 20R59?
I'm so moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilmember Hayward, second by Councilmember Brown. Council, any other comments or questions? Let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. We'll go ahead and proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So at this point, I'd like to call Miss Susan Beck up here with me. She is the daughter of the late Hal Baldwin, and I'm honored to have here tonight as part of the committee along with Dr. Scagliola, and we will be able to introduce the recipients. So up first, we have Miss Alexa Harper.
Good evening. Ms. Harper, come on up. Ms. Harper is a senior at St. Paul II Catholic High School and will be attending Benedictine College in the fall. After graduation, she plans to become an officer in the Air Force, where she wants to go to medical school and become a physician in the Air Force. To Alexa, being a public servant means leading through a servant's heart and embodying the mindset of humility and sacrifice in order to fully devote oneself to the service of others. And I'd like to say that I do believe that wholeheartedly that describes my father. So, congratulations. I don't exactly know how we're supposed to do this. I would hug you otherwise, but maybe not this time. I think they're doing the elbow and that a girl, so we got it. Congratulations. It was a pleasure going over your resume, your paper. I mean, it was a pleasure. It was beautiful, and you should be proud. Your parents should be proud, and we thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
I'd like to be proud of her. Photo right here.
Congratulations, Alexa. Next, we have Mr. Jacob Brem. Hello, sir. I can look straight at you. Mr. Brem is a senior at Samuel Clemens High School and will be attending McKendree University in the fall. He plans to major in political science and would like to attend law school afterward, with ultimate aspirations to run for the United States Congress in Texas. That's an aspiration, kid. Jacob states that public service means doing what is right for your constituency, even if it does not benefit you personally or your political career. So we want to congratulate you. And I failed to say, but Alexa received a $2,500 scholarship. Jacob, you have also a $2,500 scholarship from the Hal Baldwin Scholarship. And I just want you to know he'd be so proud. Once again, reading your information was absolutely just, I cannot believe all that these kids have done. And I think Mr. Scagliola would agree with me. We just could not believe the kids that we had this year apply for this scholarship. I mean, you've done more in your 18 years of life than some of us have done in 50 years, so, or will ever do, so you should be proud. You're so welcome, and thank you so very much. Congratulations, Jacob. Congrats. All right. Miss Sarah McMurray. Miss Sarah, I can look at you too. It's all these tall kids, gosh. You, ma'am, I guess, were the big winner. Miss Sarah was a $5,000 scholarship recipient, and I want you to know that we would all have gladly identified as your parents had we had the opportunity to. So you made us proud. Your resume was absolutely beyond reproach. It was impeccable. So let me give you a little bit of information about Miss McMurray. She's a senior at Randolph High School and will be attending Texas A&M University in the fall. She will be participating, is that correct? Wrong? Are we good? Okay, good. She will be, oh God, I've got the wrong kid. No, we don't. She'll be participating in the Navy ROTC program as a member of the Corps of Cadets. After graduation, her goal is to go to pilot training and become a fighter pilot in either the Navy or the Marines, which has been her dream since about 3rd grade. Sarah states that the meaning of public service to her is putting others' needs before your own in order to provide the best quality of life for the people you are serving. And I can tell you that in the 40-something years that my father spent as a public servant to this city, that's exactly what he did. So he would be very proud of you, Miss Sarah. So congratulations, and we are very glad that we could assist you with a small portion of your education. You're very welcome. Girl power, atta girl. Thank you, and I'd like to thank the council. Thank you, Mr. Scaglioli, for all of your assistance in this scholarship program. And Miss Sarah, we could not do it without you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Once again, thanks to our scholarship winners. Appreciate it. Good luck. Best of luck in your future. We'll continue with employee recognition. First is the engineering department. Ms. Willie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council in all directions. I'm here this evening to introduce the newest member of our engineering team, Mr. Christopher Blaine. Chris is originally from San Jose, California. He went into the Army right out of high school and served 3 tours of duty overseas, the first in Iraq as a combat engineer, the second in Afghanistan as a member of an explosive ordnance disposal team, and the third as a team leader of an explosive ordnance disposal team. I had to learn all those terms today. He met his wife in between the first and second deployment when he was stationed at Fort Hood, and after finishing his duty, he and she have settled in the Schertz area. He's a mechanical engineering graduate from UTSA, has 2 children, a 4-year-old girl, a 2-year-old boy, and a 3rd child on the way in September, so a lot of excitement for him. He's also passed his engineering training exam, so he's certified as an engineering training, a few years to go of experience, and he can get his PE. So I'm so pleased to have him on board as our newest graduate engineer. And with that, welcome, Chris.
All right, welcome, Chris. Mike's all yours, Chris.
Good evening. I don't really know what to say. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I love Texas, coming from California. It's a bit of a different atmosphere, but I really like it here. I'm glad to be working for Schertz and the place that I call home. So thank you.
Well, welcome to our team.
Thanks.
Next, we have the police department.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council, public of Schertz. My name is Kimberly Harris. I'm the communications manager for 911 operations. Tonight we're introducing Zoe Tellez, also known as Liz. She started April 13th. She is originally from El Paso and has attended UTSA for her bachelor's in psychology. She's married and loves to read books. She is a few weeks shy of completing her training. Liz?
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity, for me to work here. And there's not much else to say, but thank you so much. I really love the city. Everybody has been they've been wonderful. So I've really much enjoyed my time here so far. Thank you.
Welcome to our team.
And next up, we have Stephanie Luna. She started April 29th. She was born in San Antonio and attended high school locally there as well. She has previously been a junior ROTC communications officer. She worked from about 16 years old until about 2008 when she left HEB as a manager to start a family. And now she is with us. She's married to Adrian for the last 21 years and has 2 children, Adrian and Isis. And when they have free time together, they like to do rummage sales, thrift shopping, and Comic-Cons, focusing on Star Wars and Marvel and DC, which I'm not sure that's right. Okay. Anyhow, so I'd like to introduce Stephanie as the newest member, and she is also just a few more weeks in training.
Thank you. I'm actually very happy to be here. I've been wanting to be a dispatcher for a good while. Now that my kids are teenagers, kind of trying to get in there. So, but like Zoe said, everybody's been very nice. It's a very homely environment, and yeah, everybody's been great.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments, and welcome to our team.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight I have the privilege to introduce our 2 new members of our police family. We have Ian Mcmath and Xavier Charles. So Xavier here, he was born in Galveston, moved to San Antonio in 2009, where he graduated from Robert E. Lee High School. He spent the last 3 years as a detention officer with the Bexar County Sheriff's Department. He recently graduated from the San Antonio College of Law Enforcement Academy back in 2018. He currently lives with his best friend and brother, Shaquille, who is also a San Antonio police officer.
Just definitely want to say I'm very grateful for the opportunity. This is definitely a unique experience, very nerve-wracking, But this is definitely a unique and beautiful thing that y'all have going. Very personal, warming, and it's friendly here. And I just look forward to serving the city of Schertz and its surrounding communities.
Thank you. We look forward to your service here. Thank you very much.
All right, next we have Ian Mcmath. He was born in Fort Worth. He grew up in Fort Worth and went to high school up there. He attended Tarrant County Community College and then also went to Southwest Texas State University. He is a recent graduate of the ACOG Academy, and he lives now with his wife and 2 young sons of 3 and 1.
I just wanted to say thank you, all of you, for the opportunity, and I look forward to serving the community of Schertz.
Welcome aboard. Welcome to our team. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll continue with announcements of upcoming city events. There's none? Okay. Announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Dr. Brown.
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple tonight. It's good to be back up here. It's good to see our employees be able to recognize them again, so we definitely welcome them. Also want to thank Melissa for that great award and her staff. April and Lizzie and Natalie, they do a fantastic job, don't they? And I mean, when we think about our library, it's a cornerstone for our educational and cultural achievements here in the city of Schertz, so we just really appreciate them, and we rejoice with them for their well-earned awards, so thank you to them. I also wanted to recognize 2 members of our EMS team. They really completed a Herculean effort recently. They tested 1,685 individuals for COVID-19, and that's 901 staff and 784 residents at several area skilled nursing facilities in Schertz, Selma, Converse, and Seguin. So it's part of a team effort, a regional team effort to do those testings that were mandated by the state. And the 2 individuals are Tyler Boker and Denise Connors. So for Tyler and Denise, we really do appreciate their great work in that. And we have to say that for all of our public safety folks. They're really still on the front line of this. The virus is not over, and they continue to do a fantastic job serving our community. And then finally, I wanted to recognize, if you haven't seen down on El Bell all of the signs for the high school seniors, they're all down there. They did a great job, I think, and they really do a very nice job recognizing the seniors. And you know, one of the great things about working for the city of Schertz is that folks just do things when they don't have to. You know, we don't ask them to do them sometimes. They just do things that are great for the community. And one of our employees saw AJ Arriaga, and everybody knows AJ and what a great job he does, what an asset he is to our community. But, you know, he took it upon himself, and he was down there hammering those signs in that had come loose and just helping out. You know, nobody asked him. Nobody knew he was doing it. But yet we saw him do it. So just wanted to recognize AJ, and certainly AJ Arriaga deserves a lot of credit for many of the good things that we see in our community, and certainly a great representative of our police department. And that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. I have none, so we'll go on. Next on the agenda is the hearing of residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the city council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. First on the hearing of residents is Alfred Fluid. Sir.
I'm just here about the land development plan, and I just wanted to endorse it and congratulate the people that where their land is being considered for redistricting and making it available for housing. And that's just all I wanted to say, but I've got some right across the road that I'd like to be put in that same category if possible sooner or later. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Next is Maggie Tinnington. Sorry.
Good evening. Quite a few things going on at the Chamber. I think the biggest thing is we're celebrating our 15-year anniversary of being a Chamber of Commerce next week. Officially, it was June 21st, 2005 that we went from the Schertz Business Association, which started in 1974, to the Chamber of Commerce, the Schertz Chamber of Commerce, and then in 2016, of course, we then shifted to the Chamber. But we are so excited. 15-year anniversary. We have some special recognitions of 10-year anniversary Chamber members as well. We will be over at the Santikos Theater to do this luncheon, observing all the safety precautions, 50% occupancy, and very excited that we will be back in the Civic Center for the rest of our meetings this year. We have quite a few speakers lined up. July is going to be our Leadership Corps graduation of our class, of which Councilwoman Hayward is one of those graduates. We'll also have a Better Business Bureau presentation on the 10 top scams that small businesses are subjected to. I'm sure there's going to be some COVID scams that are going to be inserted in there, but it's definitely a must-hear. August is our nonprofit luncheon. We normally had that in April, but of course, due to COVID, we had to reschedule that, and that is a luncheon that all the nonprofits that are within our area that want to participate, the businesses are invited to find out what they do, what kind of donations and support that they need. It's always a very popular lunch. And then September, we are doing a Civic Leaders Luncheon. This will be our first year doing this. This will actually take the place of Meet the Candidates. What we're doing is all the incumbents, even if you have no candidates running against you, it could be just currently serving members of any council, any county offices, any school board are going to be invited to have a table, put out information about what they're doing within the community, or if they are a candidate, what they're standing for, and that enables the people that are attending the luncheon to just directly ask the questions that they want to ask of the candidates just face to face, and that's going to be the September luncheon. And let's see here, we are doing our chamber, our Caterpillar Chamber Bowl. That is our first major event beyond a luncheon. We'll be doing that August 21st, and believe it or not, all teams are sold at the current occupancy right now. So Fiesta Lanes is our partner on that, and these funds go to, 50% of them go to fund the DECA programs at both Clemens and Steele high schools. And so what they're doing there is they have 36 lanes, every other lane is empty. So 18 lanes are filled for the morning session, 18 lanes are filled for the evening, and if the governor releases more capacity, we'll be able to release more capacity. But we want to be very diligent in safety and making sure that everybody feels safe in our events. And then, of course, the last event that we'll be executing this year is going to be our Skylight Balloon Festival. That'll be October 23rd through the 25th. We are doing it at River City Community Church grounds. And again, same thing. We have 3 scenarios of the extreme scenario and the hopefully we're all going to be relaxed, have a good time, and see some balloons take off and land. Very last thing I have is taste tickets. We are doing refunds on those people that have purchased taste tickets. A lot have already come in, but we will be ending the refunds by July 1st because it's just very arduous to wait and wait. So we've got it out there in the newspaper and the Herald. Schertz, I believe, put it on their website. Selma has Cibolo. So we're trying to get the word out there on the chatterboxes, on the social medias. But if anybody has purchased taste tickets and wants a refund, please come into the chamber offices by July 1st. That's all.
All right, thank you. Ms. Dennis, is there any hearing the residents submit in writing? Oh, okay.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I believe I have submitted a copy to each of you as well as to the management staff. The gentleman's name is Mr. Ricky Austin. He resides at 1024 Natalie Way, Schertz. Said, Mayor and Council, one of the joys of childhood, or adulthood for that matter, is being able to ride your bicycle or scooter, rollerblade, skateboard, or even play basketball on your neighborhood street. These joys have been made such less safe and enjoyable recently with the decision to degrade the quality of our streets with the application of the chip seal that was recently done in the estates at Wilson Preserve. This chip seal is negatively affecting the quality of life in our neighborhood. For the residents that would like to ride their bikes, skateboards, scooters, play ball, or just go for a walk, it is a hazard. Not only it is extremely rough surface which makes it hard to enjoy those activities. It poses a danger if residents were to fall on this unsuitable surface. I understand that a fall on any surface could result in any injury, but the chip seal will ensure a higher severity of injury if one was to fall onto it. As a whole, I believe that this type of road surface is detrimental to the comfort, happiness, and well-being of the residents. The amount of oil-covered pebbles that are getting into lawns, stuck on driveways, and tracked in our houses is absurd. These pebbles that are everywhere make it extremely difficult to mow my lawn, take my trash to the curb, or even just walk from my vehicle to my house. With the recent warm weather, the amount of the pebbles that are getting tracked everywhere, but the road surface is increasing as the oil heats up and becomes soft. I can only imagine it will get worse as the weather gets hotter. While I can understand the need to be economical with current economy, I would have much better, or rather preferred, to keep our current street surface, minor cracks and all, to the incredibly rough, bumpy, and gravity surface that has been replaced. If I had wanted to live on a gravel road, I would have purchased a home outside the city limits. The decision to chip seal our neighborhood is disappointing at best, and I think the plan to continue to blight in the future should be seriously considered. I would like to see our streets return to the quality that they were before the chip seal was applied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. Okay, we'll continue with consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and are available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. First is item number 2, minutes. Consideration or action regarding the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting on June 2nd, 2020. Item number 3, ordinance number 20D-20. Consideration or action approving the ordinance providing that the Code of Ordinance of the City of Schertz, Texas be amended by revising Chapter 86, Section 86-115, maximum limits on specific streets, adding the maximum speed limits of Cibolo Valley Drive to a construction speed limit and thus temporarily changing the maximum speed limit and declaring an emergency. This is our first and final reading. Item number 4, resolution number 20R66. Consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending resolution number 20R57, approving management advisory group report on city classification and compensation study and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 5, resolution number 20R62. Consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing a master service agreement between the City of Schertz and Cibolo Valley Local Government Corporation for management services and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 6, resolution number 20R60. Consideration or action approving a resolution with the Schertz Local Government Corporation fiscal year 2020 through 2021 annual budget and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 7, resolution number 20R61. Consideration or action approving the Schertz Local Government Corporation fiscal year 2020 through 2021 water rates and other matters in connection therewith. Also reference SSLGC resolution number SSLGC R20-06. Item number 8, resolution number 20R65. Consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Guadalupe County Fire Marshal's Office for Rescue Task Force equipment and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 9, resolution number 20R58. Consideration or action approving a resolution authorizing expenditures in the amount not to exceed $65,738 with C3 Environmental Incorporated. Item number 10, resolution number 20R63. Consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing expenditures in the amount not to exceed $250,025 with Timco Incorporated in the fiscal year 2019 through 2020 and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 11, resolution number 20R64, consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Schertz and the Alamo Area Council of Governments related to provisions of goods and/or services to Joint Base San Antonio and other matters in connection therewith. And finally, item number 12, resolution number 20R56, consideration or action by the City of Schertz, by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a resolution authorizing the approval of the Bear Metro 911 budget for fiscal year 2021 and other matters in connection therewith. All right, Council, is there any of these items need to be removed for separate action? Yes, Councilmember Scott.
I would like to discuss resolution number 20R6, which is number 4.
Number 4? Okay. Council, any others? Okay, is there a motion to approve items 2, 3, and 5 through number 12?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Dalla, second by Councilmember Haywood. Council, any other comments? If not, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. We removed item number 4, so let's go back to item number 4, discussion item. Resolution number 20R66, consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending resolution number 20R57, approving Management Advisory Group report on the city classification and compensation study and other matters in connection therewith. Ms. Krause, you have the...
Right. So the resolution that you have before you simply seeks to build in flexibility so that as we go through the implementation process, if we identify any anomalies in the study or anything that is incorrect, we can fix it without having to bring that back to council. Of course, any substantive changes to the report that would impact or would result in a greater cost to the study, we would bring back before council. And in fact, the consultant recommended that we add this language into the resolution initially, and we had planned last week to do a presentation to council, but the item was moved to consent. The consultant was going to make that recommendation to amend the resolution to include the language, which, again, we didn't have the opportunity to do that, so that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay, there were 2 things. I'm very sorry I was unable to attend last week, and I looked online at YouTube and I couldn't find the city council streaming, and I read everything I could. I mean, I really tried to do due diligence on this.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed in the language that the city manager could make minor changes, and for the record, I think Dr. Brown's doing a fantastic job. I don't see the criteria for what minor even means, and it means different things to different people. I would like to see some metrics on that.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, is that what you were referring to with the...
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to say in the CCM, I believe we gave a couple of examples of what we would consider minor changes. So if a position had been mistakenly placed in the wrong pay grade, something like that, or also, you know, if we were looking to remove a classification or a position down the road from the city, removing that from the city's pay table, that kind of thing are the changes that we were referring to.
And then secondly, at the budget meeting that we went to, or I don't know if it was a budget meeting or if it was specifically on this, I beg your pardon, it's been a few weeks and there's been a lot of stuff in the news that's captured my attention as of late. I remember that very clearly. I remember there being 2 scenarios that were presented to us. At that time, I kind of lobbied for, let's get some more scenarios. It's this one or whatever. So as far as the details, I'm not suggesting tonight. I know we have a lot on our plates, but at some point, I would like to see which road we went down and why. And then also for the record, I would like to I'm very concerned what's going on in the country about defunding some police departments. I want to make sure our police officers are taken care of and compensated fairly with the market or whatever. I believe we are, but I really think we need to take care of our, and I said that in the first meeting before any of this craziness went on, like, want to take care of our police officers and firemen too. Not that we shouldn't take care of anybody, but safety is extremely important to keep Schertz.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions? Is there a motion to approve resolution number 20R66?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments or questions? If not, let's call for the vote.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, we have 6 ayes, 1 objection, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, next is a public hearing. We have 2 public hearings today. The first one is ordinance number 20S17. Conduct a public hearing, consider and/or take action on a request to amend the official zone map by rezoning approximately 0.5 acres of land from single-family residential district, that's R-2, to Main Street Mixed Use District, MSMU, located on 619 Main Street, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Mr. Copai, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So as you stated, this is a zone change for 619 Main Street to the Main Street mixed-use zoning district. Just for familiarity here, this is the subject property in this brighter green color. This is Main Street and this is William Street, so it's right in the corner of those 2 streets. Before the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, we sent out public hearing notice mailers, and so far at the time of this presentation, we received 2 responses opposed to the zone change from the surrounding property owners. This is a copy of the comprehensive plan for this block between Main Street and Exchange Avenue. You can see that the land use designation is this Main Street commercial. It's also designated as part of the historic downtown Schertz. And the objective of the historic downtown Schertz area is to leverage the heritage of the city to create a unique destination that will eventually be filled with local independent businesses while also encouraging the use of the existing buildings that are on that block as well. The Main Street Mixed-Use Zoning District was created to help property owners within this block achieve the goals of the comprehensive plan. So in that sense, Main Street Mixed Use is compatible with the comprehensive plan. It's also compatible with the property owner's plans for the development of the subject property. He plans to repurpose the existing house, the structure on site, in order to develop that local hair salon that he's going for. This is the zoning exhibit for the application. On the left is the current zoning map, on the right is the proposed. As you can see, again, the subject property outlined in green. As you can see, it's currently surrounded primarily with single-family residential zoning, the Main Street mixed use, and then general business down here all along Main Street. So it is, in fact, already surrounded by single-family residential and low-intensity commercial, as well as other commercial within general business. So the Main Street mixed use should not have an adverse impact on the adjacent development. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed zone change because of the reasons that I just stated, the compatibility with the comprehensive plan for historic downtown Schertz, and there should be no adverse impact on the existing and future adjacent development. The Planning and Zoning Commission also held a public hearing last month and voted to make a recommendation of approval to City Council by a 7-0 vote. The applicant is here if you do have specific questions for him as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Second notice for any comments regarding this public hearing. Final notice for comments regarding this public hearing. I see no one stepping up. Public hearing is now closed. Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Dalla.
Are we still waiving the rezoning application fees for the Main Street area?
Yes. To Main Street Mixed Use District, yes.
Yeah. And that's, I just wanted to bring that out. That's one of the things that we talked about quite a bit on planning and zoning, is the idea that eventually these streets would be all rezoned to a Main Street mixed use to allow them to transition back and forth between residential and commercial use, and this kind of supports the long-range plan, so I think it's a good idea.
Council, any other comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 20S17.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Dalla. Council, any other comments? Now let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Okay, next is item number 14. Ordinance number 20S16. Conduct a public hearing, consider and/or take action on a request to amend the comprehensive land use plan by changing approximately 229 acres of the future land use map from the mixed-use neighborhood and agricultural conservation land use designation to single-family residential land use designation located approximately 6,000 feet east of the intersection between FM 1518 and Lower Seguin Road, also known as Bexar County Property Identification Numbers. That's number 309419, number 309811, number 310011, and number 310013. City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas, and this is our first reading.
I get a lengthy property description there, but just for everyone else too, there's an aerial map of the subject property. Once again, the neon green is highlighting the subject property boundaries. Some arterials in the area, FM 1518, Lower Seguin Road, and then we have Schaefer Road as well. This is the existing portion of the Ryan Valley subdivision that's being developed. Prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we also sent out public hearing notice mailers to the surrounding properties within 200 feet. As of today, we have had 5 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 neutral to the proposed comprehensive plan amendment. So the future land use map for the subject area was evaluated as part of the sector plan amendment to the comprehensive land use plan, which was adopted by City Council in 2013. The subject property here is indicated with this gold star. As you can see, it overlaps onto 2 different future land use designations, the mixed use neighborhood, this lighter purple, and this lighter yellow as the agricultural conservation. Zooming in to a map provided by the project engineer, just to show the individual relationship with the tracks with the individual future land use designations. The blue are the individual tracks, and then you can see again the purple is the mixed use neighborhood, and the yellow is the agricultural conservation. So just to get a little bit of background information on these land use designations. So the current designations on the subject property is a mixed use neighborhood and agricultural conservation, like the mayor said. The mixed use neighborhood is intended to accommodate the development of walkable, very walkable neighborhoods within southern Schertz that would provide a range of quality housing types, from large lot single family detached homes to garden homes to even multifamily housing options that would also focus on usable open spaces, greenways, and trails. The agricultural conservation land use designation is intended to preserve much of southern Schertz in a rural and agricultural state, which would consist largely of large lot, 5-acre minimum lot size residential and agricultural uses, along with some ag-related commercial businesses. And then the proposed land use designation is the single-family residential one, which is intended to be comprised primarily of your traditional single-family detached homes that would focus on a traditional design with a small mix of lot sizes, as well as limited commercial development for neighborhood support in and around the arterials. So I think it's important when considering an amendment of this size to revisit the goals and objectives of the original sector plan, which we would be amending from 2013, which sought to establish future development objectives that would, on one hand, balance the traditionally rural and agricultural identity that shaped a lot of the character of southern Schertz with the opportunity for smart growth as the city continues to develop south of 78, And I think evidence of these goals is most clearly identified within the future land use map, which is what you're looking at on your screen here. For instance, most of Southern Schertz was identified under the estate neighborhood, this orange color, and the agricultural conservation, this yellow color, future land use designations, which is a clear intention of rural character preservation through the requirement of these large residential lots and the utilization of open spaces and ag-related commercial businesses. Whereas at the same time, key areas along major thoroughfares were identified to have potential for smart, concentrated growth. And you can see that at the intersection of the two principal arterials, Lower Seguin Road here and FM 1518. Was to be established as the mixed-use core future land use designation, which would be centered around the goals for development of a variety of single-family, multifamily, commercial options, office options, other places to work. It would be identified as a walkable town center that would be intended as a mixed-use community. With the mixed-use core established here at that intersection with arterials, the immediately surrounding areas between the other arterials were then identified as that mixed-use neighborhood, which I described earlier, was the walkable residential options that would act as kind of a buffer or as a transition period between that denser core and then the agricultural conservation areas that you see over to the east. The subject properties, again, located both on mixed-use neighborhood and agricultural conservation, which do both play important roles in keeping the balance between that concentrated development and then that rural preservation, which were both highly emphasized in the sector plan. So I think there's two key takeaways here looking at the comprehensive plan amendment. The first one is the potential ramifications, I think, for the rest of Southern Schertz. Given the size of the subject properties, this proposal will change their future land use designations to single-family residential could detract from the potential of the development of a mixed-use core without the necessary further analysis by the city on whether that would be what we want, which would result in more of Southern Schertz eventually being developed into the traditional neighborhoods you would see, the master plan communities being developed. I'd also like to note that if the amendment is approved in order to be consistent with the other property owners in the area, future proposed amendments to that single-family residential land use designation from this mixed-use neighborhood and AgCon would be recommended for approval as well. And then the second key point is that the comp plan needs to be analyzed for all of Southern Schertz and not just individual properties. Now, staff fully understands that it's important to consistently update the comprehensive land use plan in order to have goals that are both beneficial to our residents of the entire city, but also feasible for the given housing market. The sector plan was adopted in 2013, and the needs and desires of our residents since that point could have very well shifted more towards the goals of this comprehensive plan amendment. However, staff is not comfortable modifying the comprehensive plan for such a large area without further evaluation of the future land use map for all of Southern Schertz together. The subject properties, to add more context, are also part of over 3,000 acres in Southern Schertz scheduled to be annexed into the city over the next 18 months. And staff feels that any sort of amendment to such a large area in Southern Schertz should be looked at in the context of all those properties as well. With that, staff is recommending denial of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment for the reasons I just described, the incompatibility of the proposed amendment with the goals behind the sector plan, the potential collateral impact on the future development given the scale of the proposed amendment in Southern Schertz, and that the comprehensive plan should instead be reevaluated for all of Southern Schertz instead of individual developments. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing last month as well and voted to make a recommendation of denial to City Council by a 6-1 vote. When speaking on their recommendation, they mentioned the original intent behind what the stakeholders were talking about and the property owners were talking about with the sector plan amendment to keep that agricultural heritage preservation along some key areas of Schertz. I know our Commissioner Charlaw mentioned that the sector plan was a group effort in the larger context of Southern Schertz, and any sort of amendment to a large portion of it should also be a group effort. I know the applicant is here and is going to be making a presentation. I can turn it over to them if you'd like. Yeah, no worries.
Mr. Torine, I understand you have a couple maps there you'd like to pass out to, yes, yes, please. Go ahead, sir.
Perfect. My name is Raymond Tarin. I'm with MTR Engineers. We're the civil engineers on the project. Our address is 12770 Cimarron Path, San Antonio, Texas, 78249. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having us here tonight. We are here to make a request to amend the comprehensive land use plan for approximately 229 acres, as has been presented, to the future land use map from mixed-use neighborhood and agricultural conservation land use designations to the single-family residential land use designation. So that's what's shown on the exhibit here. You guys have just seen this already presented. Right now, this is the area that is the mixed-use neighborhood. This is the agricultural conservation area. We've got approximately 124.5 acres that are already designated mixed use and about 105 that are agricultural conservation. Now, that is a hard interpretation of where that line is. I think it's kind of been a general line accepted as what it is. What we're proposing to change it to is single-family residential. Okay, is that better? Okay. Perfect. So what we're proposing to change it to is a single-family residential land use, something like this, with the mixed-use development on one side, the agricultural conservation on the other, and kind of this single-family residential buffer that's kind of in between both and kind of really blending what is an agricultural with residences on one side and then the mixed-use development, which already allows for single-family residential within its use. As you know, and as stated in the Schertz sector plan, the sector plan and the comprehensive land use plan should not be considered a static document, but rather the continuous process to gather and evaluate information and make informed decisions based upon constantly changing conditions. The plan is intended to be reviewed on a regular basis and to be updated accordingly. We agree with the city's goal to balance its traditional identity with the opportunity for smart growth as the city continues to develop. The requested amendments to the comprehensive land use plan we are requesting are consistent with this smart growth plan. The current plan has a multi-use core at the intersection of FM 1518 and Lower Seguin, which is right over in this area here. The surrounding areas radiating out from that core are designated as mixed-use neighborhood, focusing on the development of a variety of walkable retail, restaurant, office, civic, and multifamily uses intended to anchor adjoining residential neighborhoods. The Schertz sector plan specifically states the intent to anchor the residential neighborhoods. However, with the current plan, there's a sudden or a direct transition that goes right from the multi-use over to a one house per every 5 acre use immediately adjacent to it. So the mixed-use neighborhood could be apartments, townhomes, retail, higher density uses, and then immediately adjacent, you've got one house for every 5 acres. What I'm going to show you now is kind of a plan that we've been working with some city staff and others to develop. This is the overall master plan that we've worked to develop for this area, just to kind of give you a general idea. I think after our presentation to P&Z, Planning and Zoning, it was kind of obvious to us that there wasn't a ability to understand what it is we were proposing, and that what we were proposing was significantly different from what was already kind of allowed under the mixed use and the current land use plan. So to that effect, we've put together a plan demonstrating how lots would lay in and the relative proximity to adjoining developments, schools, and so forth. So the type of residential development that we are requesting to provide to the citizens of Schertz includes garden homes, affordable workforce housing, and residential lots averaging above 8,400 square feet. The adjacent Rhine Valley subdivision has price points from 220s to 270s and is almost fully developed. Our project would provide additional housing in that market that is needed in this area to provide affordability of family homes in the city. We have planned for amenity park areas for residents that will be maintained by the Homeowners Association. An area for townhomes has been planned adjacent to this development. There is an area that is currently planned for commercial, medical, office, open space for walking paths and connectivity to Rhine Valley subdivision to the west, connectivity to the future school site owned by SCU ISD to our north, meandering sidewalks along the parkways of the new extension for FM 3009, which is part of the city's major thoroughfare plan, that runs down the middle of our project. There have been provisions made to widen roadways along park areas and along mailbox locations to reduce the impact of parked vehicles on traffic. Our plan is to increase the depth of some of the smaller lots to increase the building setbacks and allow for adequate parking in front of the garage and a decrease of on-street parking. So I'm just going to show you a few blow-ups now to kind of emphasize what we've done with this plan in order to kind of get it to this point. So we've got pedestrian walkways throughout the development connected along green belts and pedestrian-friendly sidewalks along roadways. These are the trails that are kind of shown around the outside of the project and throughout the development. We've got connectivity to the existing planned school that is going to be developed just within our property immediately adjacent to it here. We've also got connectivity to the adjoiners. We've got parking at HOA maintained park areas that include head-in parking and parallel parking with 5-foot offsets to widen the adjacent roadways. So we're planning to widen the roadways in the areas where we know that there's going to be a potential for parking. We've got widening also planned at the male community cluster boxes with offsets in the curbs again to widen for resident parking during collecting mail. On some of the smaller lot areas, the 55-foot lots, smaller lots have been increased in depth to 125 feet to allow for a 30-foot building setback. This setback will allow for 35 feet from garage to front property line, minimizing on-street parking. We've added connectivity for adjoining potential uses. One of the project properties that are adjoining to us is kind of, even though it's not within the project at this time, it is planned to eventually be brought into the project as maybe a future townhome location. So we've got connectivity to that area. We're planning for meandering sidewalks along 3009 in the roadway section that's planned there. Internal streets have been reconfigured to reduce potential for speeding. One of the large items that we're doing is we've got a sanitary lift station for Saddlebrook that will not only serve this project, but will eliminate the Rhine Valley lift station and provide capacity for current commitments to that lift station. And you see the location kind of identified there along Lower Seguin Road. We've revised and made some provisions for the connectivity of some of the project streets area, instead of taking it, to take it off of 3009 and to connect it to Lower Seguin Road in an effort to minimize the number of access points you've got onto 3009 and keeping it as a true thoroughfare. And then we're planning for HOA parks that contain playscapes and open field areas that are referenced in some of the, and I've got a couple of photos, I guess, that show that there are one there shown. Let's see. One of the potential clients we've been talking to, or buyers for one of the areas, is a medical office clinic that's proposed in the area closest to Lower Seguin Road. And then we've also got a group that is looking at doing some garden homes, zero lot line garden homes with rear alleys that are one-way alleys that would help again to get the traffic off of the main roadways there and kind of fall in line with what Schertz is looking for as a mixed-use type of development project. The plan change we are requesting is to allow for a project that is in keeping with the spirit of Schertz. A single-family residential land use designation will soften the transition between the mixed-use and agricultural conservation land uses while meeting the goals that Schertz has set for its community. The project is unique in this request because the multi-use and agricultural residential change occurs abruptly within the tract. In most cases, the land use does not even follow the tract boundaries, but actually just divides the lots and the tracts right down the middle. Staff's position is that if this request is granted, that every request would have to be granted to change land use. We disagree. These properties lie right at the line between the two very distinct land density uses. It's the right place to introduce a transition. Let's see. Coming back to this. So additionally, this residential use designation and eliminating a portion of the multi-use area also makes sense because though we are incorporating walking connectivity throughout and adjacent to the proposed development, this project is just over 1 mile from the intersection of 1518 and Lower Seguin Road. This distance, with the high temperatures we see most year-round, does not make it likely that anyone would be making a 2-mile round-trip walk down to the town center that's proposed at the area of 1518 and Lower Seguin Road. Therefore, extending the multi-use type of development this far from the focal point of the town center is not practical. The types of development in a multi-use land designation are higher density uses that cannot be supported by the surrounding existing development or proposed land use of agricultural conservation. A commercial retail center or medical office use needs residential development in order to support those businesses. Our project proposes to bring the rooftops that would be needed to facilitate the plan that Schertz has for this area. We would work with the City of Schertz staff to provide sufficient utilities to serve the tract. There's an existing sanitary sewer lift station that is adjacent to this property within the Rhine Valley subdivision. Our project will construct a new, larger lift station that will replace the existing lift station that is under capacity. This new lift station would be designed to serve the immediate area beyond even our own project needs and would further the city's goal for the development of this area west of our project. The project, as a benefit to the water system, would loop the existing water main along Lower Seguin Road with the water main on Ray Corbett and Raft Burnett Schaefer, improving the distribution system. This project does not create a detrimental issue to adjoining properties. This project does not interfere with the mission at Randolph Air Force Base. It is outside of the air installation compatible use zone and the accident potential zones, 1 and 2. It will provide an average lot size to meet code requirements with a diversity of housing from garden homes and townhomes to 70-foot single-family residential lot widths. It will incorporate pedestrian connectivity and park spaces. It will provide the proper transition between planned land uses in the city master plan. This project with the plan that we are presenting will meet all of the Schertz code requirements and would be allowed anywhere else in the city. The only thing that prevents staff from making a positive recommendation for this project is the comprehensive land use plan and sector plan. And lastly, the requested land plan amendment is supported by and being requested by the current landowners representing 229 acres in the area. Now, this is pretty much where I ended the presentation with P&Z, and I didn't make the presentation of the land plan at P&Z. But somehow I think I ended up with everybody confused about what we were talking about. And the reason I say that is because the conversation that we had after that presentation was about this area remaining all agricultural. And I think I failed to convey the fact that already over half of this property is designated as mixed use. And so we're not trying to say that this is going from all being agricultural to now all being something developed. It was already planned that over half of this would be mixed use, and the other half would be, or 105 acres of it would be the agricultural conservation. So I wanted to just stop and restate again that the mixed-use development allows for apartments, townhomes, commercial, retail, etc. Conversation that we had about increased impact to sewer systems. We're improving the sewer capacity in the area and providing a solution to the existing undercapacity lift station in Rhine Valley. The existing sanitary sewer lift station that's in Rhine Valley is already under capacity for its committed capacity. We would be providing the sanitary sewer to replace that system to allow it to gravity flow to our system, which means that existing lift station goes offline. It's a gravity system from there down to the lift station that we are going to be developing with this project. On top of that, it's going to meet our capacity, and it's going to allow for an additional 1,000 or 2,000 homes or EDUs that could be tied into that lift station. The conversation between the commissioners was about the impact of the water system. We will be providing additional connectivity in the area by extending a new water main from the line along Lower Seguin Road up to the north. our average density between the two, the high-density mixed use and the agricultural conservation, will actually have a lesser dense project with what we're proposing than what the current land plan would allow for. As far as the impact to the military mission at Randolph, again, we're proposing to be less than or equal to the existing density allowed in the existing sector plan. More than half this property is already planned as high-density multi-use, and these tracts are located outside of any area of impact designated by Randolph. There are already other land uses with higher intensities that are closer to the areas of impact to the base. And finally, I want to state that we are here with this request today because city staff told us that we needed an amendment to the comprehensive land use plan to change the designation to single-family residential. I would ask you to consider if this amendment is even needed or if this project shouldn't already be allowed with the existing comprehensive land use plan and the definition of what is already allowed under the multi-use neighborhood designation and a liberal interpretation of where the change to the agricultural conservation land use actually occurs. Thank you all. That's all I've got. We'll be here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. All right, this item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Please step up to the mic. Okay, second notice for comments regarding this public hearing. Final notice for comments regarding this public hearing. I see no one stepping up. Public hearing is now closed. Council, before I open this item up for discussion, I'm aware this approach is not something that you're accustomed to, and with council's indulgence, we will be reviewing 12 different items on this analysis and recommendation. This approach will allow council to systematically and methodically consider the analysis and recommendation with 2 different viewpoints from the same sector plan. What makes this interesting is that when staff was looking at the denial, they tend to overlook the approval. Therefore, this analysis and recommendation requires a closer review. Council should then decide and determine what is relevant, what is irrelevant, what's your vision, and what is in the best interest of this city. Now, the sector plan of 2013 provided constraints, but it also provided opportunities. In addition, it focused on the benefits while reviewing the 2013 infrastructure limitations and the current agreements with landowners in place at that specific point in time. The sector plan, page 9, section 1.5, item A. One major goal of this plan is to encourage development surrounding Randolph Air Force Base. Isn't that the intent of this development? So with your indulgence, let's dissect the analysis and recommendation. What I went ahead and did is I got 15 copies here. We can just pass these out. Mr. Kapai, could you please put this on the overhead? You just put page 1 there. And we need to go to item number 1 there, if you just...
Yeah, I don't actually know how to zoom out on this, to be honest with you. Brian, do you know how to zoom out on this?
Just lower it down?
I can scroll if
there we
you
go.
want while
That's
we're
fine.
doing it.
Right there, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Kapai, could you briefly review and confirm this is the actual analysis, just highlighted and formatted differently?
Of all 12 points? Read them all and
Yes.
the highlight is what you're...
pages.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Council, I took the liberty of highlighting and hitting specific words on this recommendation so that we can be looking at each one of these individually. First, let's go to item number 1. Reference designation for key areas in South Schertz. Key areas identified in the sector plan, reference page 53, section 8.1, land uses, refers to IH10 and 1518 as key areas. This development is 1 mile away from the designated key location in the sector plan. The sector plan does not designate this specific area as a key location. Let's go to item number 2. The preservation requirements for large residential lots. Reference the sector plan, page 9, section 1.5, item A. This plan considered the area installation compatible use zone study, 1 house per 5 acres. This development is 2 miles distance from the flight plan, and current housing construction has not affected, compromised, or jeopardized the mission at JBSA Randolph. In addition, sector plan, page 15, section 3.2, item B, and I quote, South Schertz is zoned for large lots, single-family homes, far beyond what is realistic from a market standpoint, end quote. Basically, what they're saying here is large residential lots is unrealistic. This analysis and recommendation mentions the preservation of large residential lots, yet they put in their smart growth. It's mentioned on the next section there. Mr. Koply, do you know what smart growth is? Could you define smart growth?
Sure, Mayor. I think there are a couple I may jump in. People define smart growth differently, but essentially it's intended to be sustainable growth. And generally what that has to do with is a variety of integrated housing types. So rather than building all single-family lots of, say, 6,000 to 7,000 square feet, smart growth tends to integrate land uses, so you don't rely necessarily on folks having to get in a car. You don't necessarily have to pick up and move to the other side of town when you want to downsize when your kids kind of move out. You've got the ability to stay within your neighborhood with a variety of housing types. So it's intended to be more sustainable as opposed to a mass of a particular housing type.
All right, thank you. So basically, it's perplexing. Smart growth planning promotes compact communities, yet this section mentions large residential lots. You can't have both. You can't have large residential lots and a compact community. You can't have both. So let's go to item number 3. Mixed-use core future land use designation. As you've seen, Mr. Tareen provided you some maps. The definition of mixed-use core community is a combination of single-family residential, which this has, multifamily residential, it doesn't have it, but we'll come back to that. Garden homes or townhomes, it does have garden homes. A commercial lot, there is a commercial lot. There is a school adjacent to it, parks, walking trails, and open space. Mr. Tareen, did your original plans have a multifamily residential, sir? You did have it, okay. Why is it not on this plan? Could you step up, please? Okay, my first question was that your original plans have multifamily residential.
Yes, our original plan did have that in there.
And why is it not on this plan?
We were asked or told that it was not going to be appropriate for the project.
Okay, thank you.
By the city staff.
Thank you. So your plans were mixed-use core. Staff asked you to remove the multifamily residential. Eliminating this removed your mixed-use core designation. Mixed-use core may have been what staff was looking for, but not what you have. However, this portion of denial was based on your development not being mixed-use core. Let's continue. The sector plan, page 69, characterized mixed-use neighborhood for smart growth at the intersection at 1518 and Lower Seguin Road. I must remind Council, The distance of this development is 1 mile from this intersection. Item number 4. Mixed-use core, open space acts as a transition between dense core. Sector plan, page 65, and it states, for greater preservation of open space associated with cluster development, the sector plan recommends maintain gross density of 0.2 development units per acre. That's equivalent to 5 houses per acre. So let's do some math here. We got 229 acres, minus 12 for a detention pond, minus 4 for commercial, leaves us with 213. For easier math, let's round it down to 200. 5 houses per acre, 200 acres, 1,000 homes. This development consists of 629 development units. This is 2/3 of the land use and leaves an additional 1/3 open space in the development, more than what the sector plan is recommending. Item number 5, rural preservation that was highly emphasized. Reference sector plan, page 53, section 8.1, and also page 54, section 8.2. The only reason it was emphasized was based on the ETJ development agreements in place during the assessment of this sector plan. And I quote, these development agreements were analyzed and understood as a context for the framework of this plan, end quote. Basically, Gateway Planning, who did this sector plan, took into the account the current situation and not necessarily made any recommendation regarding this portion of land in the ETJ east of 1518. Item number 6, single-family residential could have a potential ramification for the rest of South Schertz. You have to ask yourself, did the following have any ramifications? Fire station number 3, Ryan Valley Development, Corbett Junior High, Rose Garden Elementary. How about the road on 1518, the road construction? Council, all things have ramification. Even a stop sign or a traffic light will have some type of ramification. Council, you have to consider the opportunities and the potential benefits this development will have on South Schertz. If you could just give me page number 7. Page number 2, we'll go to item number 7. The needs and desires of our residents. No argument here. I totally agree with this statement. The needs and desires of our residents have shifted. That's why we're here today, to evaluate this amendment. Item number 8, staff is not comfortable. This statement is very concerning, but we'll go up to number 9. The subject properties could be looked at a larger context. So let's examine this. A large area of land. The developer is looking at 229 acres compared to over 11,000 acres in South Schertz. That is 1.7% of the land. You have to ask yourself, why not consider a small parcel before tackling the whole South Schertz? Council, just think, if we amend this small parcel, imagine the valuable information it will provide to assess the situation and review the ramifications compared to paying a contractor $300,000 to $400,000 to basically provide another sector plan similar to this. What makes staff feel comfortable makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. Item number 10, remain consistent and fair. This statement is much more concerning and alarming. If I interpret this correctly, staff's analysis is indicating if council approves this amendment, they are stating the staff can no longer be able to provide a fair assessment because they have to be fair to all property owners. Therefore, all future amendments are approved. We are here today because it is part of the process. Staff can remain fair by providing a true assessment to this or any other application, because no two properties are in the same location. Each amendment merits its own individual consideration. Just like this developer, he had a choice to determine whether or not to continue the process. The same opportunities are given to any future applicants. It's up to them to determine the resolve. Planning and zoning and council make the decisions. It's their responsibility to analyze, determine, and decide what their vision is. Collectively, as a group, the ultimate decision will be made. Item number 11 and item number 12 will create issues with the city's efforts with water and wastewater master plan. We recently constructed a new water storage facility. Construction of a new treatment plant is underway. Is staff indicating we failed to plan for the future? Of course not. The water and wastewater master plan is reviewed every 5 years. This plan is just an administrative review of our infrastructure. The new facilities are capable of handling the increase, and when the master plan is reviewed, they will account for the additional development units. And finally, the last portion there, it's incompatible with the goals and objectives of the 2013 sector plan. This analysis and recommendation review was good, but not perfect. It was intended to be critical and motivated to get the results and outcome they wanted, but not necessarily what the sector plan reflected or what was in the best interest of this city. Council, one minor adjustment to our parliamentary procedures. Mr. Tureen will be allowed to clarify some points regarding any questions you may have. Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Dalla?
All right, well, that said a lot. I've previously met with these guys on their project and provided them with some feedback, and they've made some pretty substantial changes to it based on the suggestions and feedback. And, furthermore, with the planning and zoning vote, I understand why they voted the way they did. I watched the video of that. The one thing is that with planning and zoning, you're kind of restricted as to considering what the item is, which was the update on the land use plan, and so they didn't really get an opportunity to see what the plans were for the development. And I really think that might have made a difference in some of their decision making. And I've been looking at the sector plan for months as part of this process, and trying to understand it, trying to see if this fits, and if it does fit, where it fits. And as I got to the end of it, at the end of it, down the last page 275, page 300, down at the end, one of the things that they published in there was some of the questions that they asked the community during the public hearings and some of the public presentations. And some of the ones that I took some notes on was that on one of the questions there, 69% of the respondents ranked quality of commercial uses, parentheses, retail services, as being most important or important. We don't have retail down there. We've got 2 convenience stores booked in on both sides of 1518, and there's nothing else down there, but 69% of the respondents thought that was important to have down there. Another one of the questions said 71% of the respondents responded affirmatively to the statement, "It is important to provide more residential development opportunities." Another question was 63% of the respondents said that conventional multifamily is not appropriate. And just kind of rhetorically, I'm asking myself, well, if that's what the response was from the community, and that this is an iron-fast, ironclad document, then why did Council, P&Z, and staff vote for and recommend changes to rezone a property to multifamily next to the Halley Heights subdivision a couple of years ago on 1518. And, well, the answer to that question is that from planning practices, it's an appropriate place to put it for a transition to buffer the single-family homes from the high-intensity retail use that's along Interstate 10. Another one of the questions is, 55% of the respondents felt that traditional neighborhood development was appropriate in some or all of the different zones that they used in the study. Another one was 62% wanted urban mixed use for Zone 3, which according to the illustrations was the I-10 corridor along the access road and not the intersection of 1518. So the people voted wanting to have the urban mixed use core along the interstate and not at the intersection of 1518. Well, why did we do something different? Well, we've got a lot of education, we've got a lot of experience, and, they took that information that was provided by the residents and used that to craft a plan that fits with modern-day planning practices as well as trying to meet the needs and the desires of the people that were participating in that study. But when you look at the area that we're talking about in specific now, it's designated for multi-use core, multi-use transition on the sector plan. It was also drawn as an arbitrary line, and there's no regard to the existing property lines or the parcels that are involved in tonight's discussion. And they're bisected and I would say negatively impacted by this arbitrary line. And I'm not saying this that we need to throw out the sector plan and do what we want to with it, but to recognize that this is not the be-all, end-all, but we should use it as a valid source of information to review, to reflect, and contrast with other sources, and to apply good, sound judgment when looking at a proposal like this. I feel that this project fits in with the existing conditions around there. It provides connectivity to Rhine Valley. It provides connectivity to the schools. It provides a new kind of housing product, which we currently do not have in Schertz with the townhomes. The other thing that is kind of unique about it is that they're moving the setbacks back to lengthen the driveways. That will allow residents there to put 4 cars in the driveway and reduce the number of vehicles that are parked in on-street parking. And so when I saw this finally come up with P&Z, I continued doing some more research and stuff, and one of the other things that I found that was really interesting is, City Council on July 16, 2013, approved Ordinance 13S21, which is the sector plan. And on the Planning and Zoning minutes from August 14th of 2013 was the meeting in which we had the discussion about the Rhine Valley subdivision. And staff report on that is here for, this is item ZC 2013-001. And the staff report said the proposed density is consistent with the comprehensive land plan designation of mixed-use neighborhood. Mixed-use neighborhood provides areas for residential use and open space. The proposed zoning allows for lots of 3 different minimum sizes: 5,400 square feet, 6,000 square feet, and 7,200 square feet as shown on the Master General Development Plan. The proposed PDD also provides for some specific development standards. Skipping down a little bit, the subject property is currently surrounded by undeveloped land, residential, agricultural, and a public school. Staff believes that the rezoning request will be compatible with the surrounding properties. The MPD shows 5 acres of parkland that will be developed and dedicated to the City of Schertz as a public park. Well, this development, they're planning to maintain those parks as HOAs and not be a burden on the city and our Parks and Rec Department. Finally, the comprehensive land use plan with the Schertz sector plan amendment identifies this area as mixed-use neighborhood, which provides for walkable neighborhoods in the vicinity of the intersection of FM 1518 and Lower Seguin Road. Staff recommends approval of the zoning request based on compliance with the comprehensive land use plan and the improved design and layout of the subdivision. That's pretty much exactly opposite of what the staff recommendation is on this property tonight, which is immediately adjoining it. Granted, I don't have the education experience. I have 8 years of service on planning and zoning prior to coming here. I feel that this subdivision is appropriate for what they want to do. It's appropriate for the location. I disagree with the staff's comment about recommending changes to all future applicants. I agree with the mayor on that this is a unique piece of property. Their locations make each one unique and different and valid of independent consideration. And I think that's all I have for right now.
Anyone else? Councilmember Larson?
I just have a few questions just to clarify my understanding. If this, just a hypothetical, if this had been all mixed-use neighborhood zoning, would they require a change still for both the original plan and the current plan that they've presented, or would it be allowed?
Yeah, I think the issue that staff had, Mayor, or Councilman, I can certainly appreciate the different views and different interpretations of the comp plan, is that when we met with the applicant and walked through their proposed layout, and that was really kind of, I think, the starting point was, what is it you ultimately want to do, and then let's talk about the pathways you have to get there, is the feeling was we'd be arguing this issue of what is mixed use and what does that form look like relative to what they wanted to do. Staff's position, and this is simply staff's position, you have different positions, is that what they really wanted to do more closely resembled single-family residential as designated in our comp plan. If you kind of look at the layout and look at the features and look at the factors, we felt that was more consistent with what was reflected in the comp plan for single family. And so our direction or our suggestion was, rather than try to adjust the designation of Main Street mixed use and have us have a longer process trying to get the development to conform what we felt was that definition of Main Street mixed use in the layout, our answer was simply, what we would say is, come in and request what we think it is you're really looking to do, which is single family residential. And that if the designation's approved, I would agree that the layout they provided is fairly consistent with single family residential in a lot of respects. And so if the designation is approved, then generally what you want to do, we'll make a few tweaks here or there with various things, but that's essentially what it is, as opposed to going through and maybe amending the comp plan for Main Street mixed use, and then we sort of repeat that struggle at time of zoning. And so the idea was, let's sort of settle this for once and for all, because in staff's opinion, you can have different opinions, what they really want to do is closer to single family residential, and so let's settle it with the comp plan amendment, and that way then the zoning can go more smoothly going forward, and we're not arguing those issues.
Okay, so, and you're probably used to this after 4 years. I'm a little slow on the uptake here.
No, that's okay.
So this, we're talking about approving an amendment to the comprehensive land use plan.
Yes.
So that they can apply for a zoning change?
So per state law, zoning should be done in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
And because it's not zoning, the comp plan is more vague in what is allowed and not allowed. So you're saying what they're proposing, maybe it fit mixed-use neighborhood, maybe it didn't. That's for us to determine through a round of back and forth at a conference table with a developer. But if they get us to approve a change to single family, then it simplifies those conversations from a staff perspective and lets you put it in a nicer box zoning-wise.
I think,
is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. So if I may, again, cities should zone in conformance with their comprehensive land use plan. And again, certainly there are areas of ambiguity, there are areas of different interpretation. I think the most obvious example, if you have an area that's clearly designated for heavy industrial, and instead you went in and zoned it as single-family residential, most people would say, well, that's not really in conformance. And so that's what you're not supposed to do. And so in those circumstances, what property owners would do is come in and request an amendment to the comprehensive plan and say, for a variety of reasons, I think this should change. You have too much industrial, the land's not well suited to industrial, any reason you may come forward with. And so again, from staff's perspective, when we looked at again, starting from what is it you ultimately want to do. You know, the comp plan clearly has a distinction in mind, at least from staff's perspective. We can certainly, you know, appreciate different viewpoints, that when the sector plan was done, they didn't designate this area generally as single-family residential with commercial at the intersections as you see throughout the city. The designation was mixed use. And again, I can appreciate it can be ambiguous, it can be confusing. I think you're right. That was generally done on the principles of sort of smart growth and new urbanism and things like that, the idea of let's create a different, unique area of Schertz, whether that's viable or not. But clearly, staff would take there's a distinction between the two. And what we looked at when we looked at the layout is, to us, it's very similar to what we get in other parts of the city with regard to single-family residential. So if you compare this to, say, Homestead or Parklands, you see a lot of similarities in the layout and features and things like that. Certainly good development, quality, and that was then our recommendation, is that we think this more clearly fits into that box of single-family residential. You should request the amendment to that, because if that's granted, then generally it's fairly easy to work out zoning that gets you what you want to do, because that's clearly in keeping with it. And so that was the recommendation that staff placed. And again, I can certainly appreciate the fact that, you know, and staff would be the first to say that lines on the comprehensive plan are in various forms, be it a thoroughfare alignment, be it a land use designation, are generalized alignments. You're not trying to scale out to the foot and say, well, it's here or here. I think ultimately where staff came back, though, is that while the property is about 230 acres or so, a substantial portion of that, 100 acres, is designated for this significantly lower density development. And so again, from our perspective, it was more than we were comfortable with. It wasn't as though there were sort of 20 acres in that designation and you'd say, well, you'd scooch it over. That was the issue. And I think certainly, you know, not to, again, I can appreciate different viewpoints and different interpretations. I think one of the things that staff has routinely gotten, including meetings with some of the folks in this room tonight, are meetings about proposed development in southern Schertz. And so staff may have, you know, and it's all our perspective, staff may have greater concerns that likely folks will look at this and say, if we're making kind of changes to what we're looking to do in terms of land use and things like that, then we would expect to get folks coming back in. It's not good or bad. It's simply, I think, again, when staff approaches these things, how we look at it, we look at what do we tell the next person that walks in. And I think the mayor's right. Every property is different. You look at the particular factors of it. But certainly, as staff has talked about, and I've been up here multiple times before you saying, we clearly have this conflict. And you've heard from some of the folks in this room in the past saying, we clearly have this conflict between the designation of the comprehensive plan, be it the mixed-use development, as well as the agricultural designation in the other. There are certainly significant issues there. And again, there's not a right or wrong answer to it, but I think staff's position was that's something that we need to address. We would prefer certainly to try to address that on the front end, set that vision, make sure we understand the implications. But again, as the mayor said, staff simply makes a recommendation. Planning and zoning simply makes a recommendation. Ultimately, it's city council to make that decision going forward, and we can certainly appreciate that. And so I think from a staff perspective, we tried to kind of hint at this in the staff report. Would not surprise us that if we were to have gone through that effort, that folks would kind of come back and say, in light of the development that we've had in the area, the mayor kind of listed a few of those, in light of the changes that have occurred, in light of some of the property owners that we've heard come before us to say, look, it's not viable for this to be agricultural land, that we might not end up with a very different plan that says, hey, look, generally we want a suburban-style residential development in this area, and this plan is in keeping with it. I think from staff's perspective, our caution was feeling more comfortable to amend the comp plan to sort of get there, but certainly understood that. I think what we didn't want to leave and maybe to clarify the position with regard to staff remaining consistent is fair, is just for council to understand that simply we meet with a lot of developers and a lot of property owners, and they point to other decisions that were made. It was interesting that Councilman Dolly made the reference to Rhine Valley and quoting the staff report for that. I'd have to go back and look at it, but as I recall, and Councilman Scagliola may recall, is there was an issue with that prior to being in the city limits and the applicant submitting a development application, and I think one of the key points you noted as you read is the improved layout. And so again, you know, perfectly honest, one of the issues we were dealing with at the time is the developer arguing, this is what I can do now by right, but I'm willing to work with you, and so thus that's part of the negotiation there. So I'd simply say I certainly appreciate the difference of opinion. It's a very long-winded answer to it, but I think staff certainly understands we try to make a recommendation to council and then work it going forward. And our feeling on this was, if you request the single family, then we have clear direction from council about the proposed development. Because just to be clear, and you make a point, and this is one of the issues, is at this point what you're considering is a comprehensive plan amendment. It's not the zoning. So unlike a planned development district that locks in that layout, the applicant, if this is approved or not, can turn around and submit whatever they want. Don't doubt that they're going to turn in the plan that they have. We certainly have no reason to doubt it. But again, just understand that this doesn't sort of tie to that. But again, that's sort of how we got to this recommendation of, if you know this is what you want to do, let's kind of hit it directly, settle this thing, and then make the rest of the process a little more smooth going forward.
And then, I'm sorry, I have more questions. Because I'm trying to understand some of the process here, just so that I can think through this correctly. So the developer comes with a proposal, and they talk to city staff, and it maybe looked a lot different than this one. It may look just a little bit different from this one, I don't know. And the staff says, okay, let's see what you have, and let's look at what our comprehensive land use plan is. And we recommend these changes, and the changes are based on trying to conform as much as possible to the current comprehensive land use plan?
No. In fact, maybe it was the opposite. So when staff met with the applicant and talked through what they wanted to do, what we felt is, you know, it's going to be hard to sort of get around a square peg in a round hole, because what we felt their plan was very similar to, and again, I'll go back and reference Homestead or Parkland, very, very nice developments, and I don't doubt that this will be too. It's very similar to that. And our feeling was simply, to us, this is really more single-family residential, which allows for that variety of product types, than it is that mixed-use project that, again, is a separate and distinct category for a reason. And so our recommendation was, look, rather than run an amendment potentially or argue whether you need an amendment to go Main Street mixed use, but then we have this big battle at the time of zoning and the particular standards and what's required and this push and pull, if this is kind of what you want to do, let's do this the best you can. And I think that's sort of what staff is a proponent of. There's nothing wrong with single-family residential. If you're going to do it, let's do it well. Let's make a nice community like we have in Schertz and do it well. And let's not have a series of compromises to try to say this meets mixed-use development that is less beneficial for the developer, that we're making trade-offs, that you look at it at the end of the day and say, well, what purpose does this serve? So again, it's too far from something, and so you have a hike and bike trail that nobody ever uses because it's too far to get there. I mean, I think what we would argue is let's make it the best of what it is. And for staff, that was run it as single-family. Again, the problem we have is that inherent, that shift to do single-family there is we feel, different than what the plan envisions. And again, that then becomes the rub, and staff saying likely we'll recommend denial of it, don't know what you'll get from P&Z, don't know what you'll get certainly from City Council, but take a run at it. This is the way the process works. Council has certainly heard from the residents and property owners in the past, and they've certainly heard from staff saying, yeah, we really do need to look at the comp plan because what we have isn't working for us. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess, and one of the things that I'm hung up on that I understand the process-wise is this, and I don't, it's important enough that I want to kind of basically understand, but I don't need to get in the weeds, but a developer comes and they, in this mixed-use neighborhood, they include something that's a multifamily property, and staff says, no, take that out, make it single family, and then they go through that process, and then staff's like, yeah, don't approve this. But it's a plan that y'all helped them come to.
So I think what we would say, a little bit, and I will say what staff tries to do is adopt a bit of a dual role with developers. As much as developers may disagree and say, that's not what staff does at all, we try to do two things. So we try to say, here's likely what staff's recommendation is going to be based on the ordinances, the policies, the plan of the city. Here's kind of how we envision it. Here's how it lays out. Most developers, it's a big deal to try to get staff support. We kind of go, I don't know that it is quite such a big deal. P&Z council make their own decisions. Certainly, but that's often why they'll call elected or appointed officials in meetings with staff to try to let us know in advance this is where they're leaning and get us to sort of just go with that. But the other role we try to take is not necessarily to say, as it may seem, and I certainly appreciate the different view, is not necessarily to say, how do we use our knowledge to win this or get staff's recommendation? Part of what we try to do, I may disagree with this, is to say, if you're going to do it, though, this is what we would suggest you do to have the greatest chance of success. So if I may, as an example, I got a developer directed to me who had talked to, I think, Councilman Scagliola the other day on an item and walked through, and I said, look, here's the rub you've got, this is the designation. I said, and he asked, what do you think my chances are? I said, I don't think you're going to get a positive from P&Z, but if you're asking me, you're probably 50-50 at City Council. This is what I would emphasize. This is what I would recommend. This is how I run it. So while they may not like staff's recommendation, and certainly I doubt a lot of them would sort of say this, our goal is hopefully at the end of the day they would say, yeah, staff kind of gave me their thoughts that were helpful to me to sort of navigate that process, even though we disagreed. And I will say this, Councilman, it's rare in my history here that you've had staff standing up and pounding on the podium saying, this is a really bad, horrible thing. You never heard staff say that, if that was the implication. I'm sorry it came out that way. I should have, been more careful with it. What we're simply saying is that, hey, based on the comp plan in this, we think we have a problem. This is how we would recommend going about it. Certainly can understand that, that timing may prove very problematic to the applicant, but that's how we would sort of go. So again, most of the times when we do these things, it's not staff pounding on the podium saying no, it's just saying we have a different view on it. This is what we've heard from council in the past and things like that in the past.
Great, thank you. That answers all my questions.
Okay, Councilmember Scott.
Ms. Hayward? Yes. So at the beginning of this, we were talking, the young gentleman there, you gave some numbers. 5 were in favor, 2 were against, and 1 was neutral. Is that correct? Are those numbers right? And was that in regard to the statement that a request to amend the comprehensive land use plan by changing approximately 229 acres of the future land use map from mixed-use neighborhood and agricultural conservation land designations to the single-family residential land use designation? And then it gives the location. So am I interpreting this correct?
Yes, so those were mailed to the property owners within 200 feet.
Got it.
It was either their responses or their calls or emails.
So this is a small sample, but I think citizens are important, and I think we have fantastic citizens in this, in Schertz. They're the best. So with that, your base is 8. It's a small sample, admittedly. 63% are in favor of this, of the landowners. 25 are against, and 1 is neutral. If you remove the neutral one, which you should do because the neutral one doesn't care, doesn't have a dog in the fight, can go with the wind, however, then you're looking at 71% are for it and 29% are against it. And so I think that we are elected to represent our constituents, and I think that it behooves us to consider what the residents and the will of the residents are. And not to get on a little soapbox or anything, but I think it's really neat to have like the parks and the walking trails, and it's very appealing. I raised 4 children in Schertz, and they were able to walk to school, and correct me if I'm wrong, aren't there there's going to be like 3 schools in walking distance? I think that's fantastic. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to piggyback off what the mayor said. When we talked about key areas and then driving down there, when you look at a key area, this isn't it. It's like a mile or so down the road from 1518. I mean, that's a major artery. And we know that with commercial, you got to have residential. You got to have the rooftops. And so when I think about that, I think about Schertz and the surrounding area and the movie theater. It took 10 years. It was in the making, but it took 10 years before either one of them got built because they had to have the rooftops to support it. So to me, to go with the whole idea of we need commercial down there, yes, we do, but we're not going to get it until we get, to me, residential. And then when we say smart growth, and I know that that definition is different for everyone, and when we said that, like some smart growth is compact, commercial and residential added together. Some think smart growth is compact and walkable. To me, in the current condition, you're talking 229 acres in the heat of the summer, who's walking there? No one's going to walk there. You're going to get in the car, you're going to drive, and then you'll park, and then you'll go, okay, now I'm going to go back. So nobody's going to walk 229 football fields and make it a city center, and then someone living in Ryan Valley or, let's say, Crossvines, they're not walking there. Heck, even in the fall, because we still have hot weather, no one's walking there. So I don't think this is going to fit in that mindset. And then when I think about, like currently we have all the 5,000 people there, and we're talking about single family. And then in this single family, this map here that we have, and you're talking there's going to be potential townhomes, but then garden homes. That's stock that we don't have down there. And it's going to be affordable for that new family to come in and live there, or someone that's working for the city that wants to live in the city, although Bexar County, they can do so. And I like that idea of affordability and having different types. And so, and with Brian James saying smart growth, so you can live in a neighborhood and move to something smaller, this gets us there, because if you're up in the top where you're buying the 2-story homes and then your kids leave, you get to go to a garden home or a townhome. So I think I'm all for thinking that this will work. And I think as far as, you know, the sector plan, if you're on page 68, the sector plan says there's an alternate development. And in that alternate development, it talks about single family homes with varying sizes of lot sizes. So it gives us an alternate. So when we look at the sector plan, we don't just have to say, oh, the sector plan says, because they give us an alternate. And then this sector plan is 7 years old. Have we done anything with the sector plan since it's been done? And then we're going to probably do another sector plan here in a little while and pay another $300,000, $400,000, and it'll change, and then something different will be for the city of South Schertz. And then when I think of going back to the whole commercial, if we want people to get there in the commercial, we're going to have to get the rooftops so we can have something different. So not only is just people in South Schertz going down there, we've got people from Central Schertz, North Schertz, heck, even Civil or surrounding areas going to something that would be different and unique for a shopping experience. So if we're going to do that, we got to get the rooftops first, and it's going to take time. When you think of the city of Schertz, I didn't grow up here, but I think of places where I grew up. And where I grew up, it was outside of the city limits of Houston. There was no bus service. There was nothing out there. And then over time, as it grew, they put things in, and we got all sorts of things over there where I grew up. So I think we need to start with getting more single-family homes down there to get the rooftops, to get the rooftops to support commercial, because we don't want commercial going down there and then they can't be successful because we don't have the people to support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown?
Thank you. Yeah, I was involved with the whole sector plan, the charrettes, the community meetings, and everything else as well. And I wish we had some more of those property owners, because, as you stated earlier, you know, the wishes of the citizens, you know, should be at the top of the list as well. You know, and at that time, the general consensus down there was, oh, we don't want a bunch of houses. We want 5-acre lots and 10-acre mini horse farms and everything else. And it's a wonderful concept The problem is, it's not happening, okay? And we could wish for things all we want, but for these people to be able to sell their land and move on at some point in the future, because it's going to happen, we might as well be smart, and like Allison said, you need rooftops before you can get stores opening, you know, and we don't just need 2 convenience stores, we need more things down there. Now granted, I don't want high-density housing, okay, because in my mind, that's what your walkable downtowns and everything else require high density, not just small lots, but true high density. We're just, I don't think we're there yet for South Schertz, but you know, we do want quality. We want quality layouts. We want quality structure. We want ease of movement and transportation. I do like the idea of the new major thoroughfare road being added in there, a true transportation addition. I think that's good. Maybe that, I don't know, I heard the word 3009 a couple of times. I don't know if that's a throw it out there and see what happens idea or what, but the fact that there is an actual road down there and not just another residential street in the middle of it. There's a lot of room down in South Schertz for large lots. I would love to see more of that. I'd love to see a whole bunch of 5 and 10 acre lots with, you know, a few horses and cows on them. That'd be wonderful, but it's just not happening down there, at least not at this point. So if we're going to continue to grow, and we do need to, we all know that, making a smart development is the right thing to do. Being flexible, and the people that may have wanted or not wanted housing in 2013, sounds like they want it now. And they're for it, and they're not against it, and whatnot. So we've got to certainly take that into consideration as well. So, as long as we keep smart about it, you know, adapting is good. That's where I want to go with it.
Okay. Councilmember Davis.
I feel like I'm ostracized over here by myself. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the staff. You guys are in an unenviable position. You have to take all of these requests and bounce them off sector plans and comp plans that were ultimately approved by a city council, and that's a guide to go by, but it's a guide. South Schertz is going to get some development. The question is how and where. I kind of like the idea of having open areas and areas that are preserved for open space. When I look at the map of South Schertz, I see a lot of parcels that are large parcels, where if a property owner wants to keep their area open, they certainly have that ability. I'm not a big fan of telling a property owner that, by the way, that you can't do what you want to do with your property. So it's kind of a hard balance, or a hard line to balance on, between someone that wants to have their large property and not do any development versus somebody that has a large property that used to be a farm and has the feeling that they no longer want to have a farm. I can tell you that since I've been on council, I've lost count of how many times people have come here and said, I have this property and I want to develop it, but I can't because of zoning or a sector plan or something else. I can't recall anybody coming to council saying, someone's trying to develop my property and I don't want them to. It's been someone who's and I've read the plan in 13. I've been here since 2007. I don't recall anybody coming here saying, stop what you're doing down there. I've had a bunch of people coming here saying, I can't sell my property. I can't maintain it anymore. I can't do a farm. It's not economical to do a farm. And oh, by the way, now I can't develop it because of some piece of paper down here. South Schertz is unique. For those listening in, we have a lot of factors that we have to consider. For example, if you look at the sector plan, we, at some point, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. James, and this is probably going to put you on the spot, at one point we had areas that are designed for commercial or mixed use, whatever, on the west side of 1518. And we've had discussions now about what we cannot develop on the west side of 1518 because of the air compatibility use zones for Randolph, and our concern about not overly developing on the west side. And if I'm not mistaken, we had some conversations before about, because this is a dynamic map, maybe some of that shifts to the east side so that it does not impact the base. And this is a typical representation of something that will generally not impact Randolph Air Force Base versus building on the west side. Another thing to take into consideration is while a lot of residents want to maintain open space and undeveloped areas in South Schertz, I think you're going to get that by default. If you look just north of this area, you've got a large area for Crescent Bend that used to have residential area and now is a park and will be that way forever because of floodplain issues. And if you look at this map that they gave us here, the dark blue is the Cibolo Creek, the light blue is what they call the 500-year floodplain. What I don't see on here is the 100-year floodplain, but I'd be willing to bet that if we overlaid a 100-year floodplain onto this map, it's going to come back in a little bit. Matter of fact, I'm surprised at the building in the lower right-hand corner, that area down there. I don't know how that would match up with a 100-year floodplain, but I know...
Councilman Davis?
Councilman Davis.
Real quick, just not to interrupt you, but the dark blue is the 100-year floodplain, the light blue is the 500.
Is that what it says on here? Well, it's on what I see on here, it has the 500-year floodplain pointing to the light blue.
Yes, sir. If I may, you're correct. I think the light blue, as you note, pointing is the 500, and then the darker blue is the 100-year.
Oh, so the darker is the 100-year? Okay.
That's the 100, and I assume that's from the current FEMA maps.
The bottom line is these floodplain implications are going to have an impact on development from 78 all the way down. Which I think are ultimately going to influence and protect some of those areas to keep them open. But again, I think based on the other conversations that we've had with regards to the ACUC on the other side of 1518, I don't necessarily see where this is that big of a change with regards to the overall intent of keeping South Schertz open with less development. And again, doing the math, this is a relatively small percentage of the total area down there that impacting South Schertz.
Okay, Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, Mayor, I was just curious. You presented this staff analysis and recommendations, which seemed more of a critique than a presentation. What was your real intent in providing this to us?
It's basically providing you a separate viewpoint from the same sector plan. None of it was opinion. Very few. I mean, when you look at it, there's 12 items I pointed out.
Okay.
They were all, most of them were quoted out of the sector plan. In fact, I have 7 more.
Okay.
Were not included.
All right, let me start. My definition of smart growth, sustainable growth with the future in mind. You don't do things necessarily for the here and now. You look 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, 25, 50 years down the road. What's going to happen then? That's my definition of smart growth. I am adamantly opposed to just building rooftops for the sake of building rooftops. My philosophy is, hey, if you build it and you build quality, people will come. And when enough people show up, yeah, you're going to get your Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. I'm willing to wait for that. I'm not willing to put the city at risk just getting rooftops on the off chance that somebody's going to look favorably upon us because we have a large population and decide to stick something in our general location. That's inappropriate. Now, going back 2013, I was on the council then. We were talking about the annexation of the south side. I'll tell you what, residents came before us, they were hopping mad because they wanted to maintain the rural nature of the south side of this city. Adamant about it. And how dare you people come in and confiscate my land and tell me that I can't keep my farm, that I can't keep my agricultural areas out there. Whoa, hold on. We never said that we wanted to put rooftop on top of rooftop. It was always our intention to maintain the rural nature of that part. Now, it was easy on the other side of 1518 because the air bases is there, the runways. You got to keep that low density. Nobody had a question about that. Now, on the other side of 1518, okay, for a while, the idea was, well, you know, why change a good thing? I like low density. You know, 10-acre lots, one house per 10 acres. Well, gee, one out per 10 acres, that'd mean 20 homes in this area. Yeah, I think it'd probably support more than that. Okay, how about one house per 5 acres? That kicks it up about 40 to 45. How about 1-acre lots? Yeah, that's 200 homes. Well, what exactly is the right number for this particular area? It isn't really susceptible to airplanes flying over it. On the other hand, going back to keeping the area as rural as possible, pretty much precludes us from putting rooftop upon rooftop upon rooftop. You know, high density, is multi-use really high density? Well, we changed our definition of lot sizes a while back also. I voted against that Pride Rock subdivision. That was absolutely heinous, in my view. Those lots were so crammed in, it was like garden home upon garden home that they were going to cram a family of 4 into. You got to be kidding me. And for some reason, oh no, that's the way it's going to be. No, it's not. And fortunately, Pride Rock went under. There was no pride in that rock, it turned out, after all. Rhine Valley came along. Okay. Rhine Valley Plan Development, I believe. Yeah. I think it's a little bit too dense. It's a vast improvement of what Pride Rock was, but still, it is very dense in population. Beautiful homes, I'll give you that. And I like what the developer did. He made it a little bit organic, so that the streets aren't all straight up and down. They meander a little bit, so it's a very nice location. But still, the density, oh well, topic for another day. And we've had that topic. We did away with R5s, small lot sizes, those 5,000. We did away with R7s. We intentionally did away with those, even in the city proper, between I-35 and 78, because we realized that the higher density properties, rooftops don't pay for themselves. We know that. Single-family residence, well, how many homes is enough homes on a lot or an acre? How big a lot? Yeah, I did like some of the amenities that were designed into this development here. I like the driveway setbacks. There are some places in the city where if you have a cul-de-sac, you cannot, absolutely cannot find a parking space anywhere on that cul-de-sac. Small houses, family of 4 moves into a small house. There's no place to park 4 cars without it spilling over into the streets. So your idea for those setbacks, hey, I applaud you for that. Really good idea. I like your green space idea. Excellent. The HOA parks, yeah, much preferred over city-owned parks. I believe every resident deserves a little bit of green space. So the design itself looks good. I'm concerned about certain things here. The garden homes, you know, when you start moving a family of 4 into a garden home, what happens in a community then? Or how about a family of 4 moves into a lot that should have a garden home on it? I don't like density. Mr. James, I'm going to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. So staff recommended this would be more appropriate as a single-family residency type community. Is that correct?
Staff felt that the proposed layout that the applicant provided was more consistent with the city's single-family residential designation in the comp plan than it was the mixed use.
Okay, so given that, they proposed to make it single-family, and then staff rejected that idea, or...
So to be clear, I think staff, and the applicants may certainly get up and disagree with me, I think staff made clear from the beginning, I think the mayor can attest to that in conversations that we had, that staff had concerns about the proposed development and the lack of conformity with the comprehensive plan. So I don't think staff said, oh, zone it single family and we're going to be fine with it, and then did a bait and switch. I think what we said is, look, we're struggling with this the whole way. You've got a large part of it, 100 acres, not quite half, that's designated for really low density. And that's a challenge for us, however we go. And when we look at your layout and we have conversations about it, we think this fits closer to the single-family residential than we do the mixed use. And so our recommendation was, in light of that, if you're going to make a run at this thing, our thought would be make a run at the comp plan to amend it all to what you want to do. And if that's granted by council, then the zoning is much easier than if you make a run at the current plan and staff's recommending denial, and it's designated as mixed use, and then we're still arguing about the particulars in the zoning coming forward, and so you're having to refight this battle 2 ways. And one of the issues is, as council knows, is, you know, a lot of those provisions that go into the zoning really affect the viability and the profitability of a project. And again, folks develop for profit. That's perfectly reasonable. And if you regulate it to the point, trying to make it something it's not, at some point they go, look, this doesn't work for me. And frankly, it becomes this Frankenstein's monster of a development that isn't quite this, it isn't quite this. You kind of get the worst of both worlds, as opposed to just go with what it is. It's a single-family residential. Again, I'll go back. I think it's, if you look at this, compare it to Parklands, if you compare it to Homestead, good projects, it's very similar in a lot of ways. And those are single-family residential development, and we got there on the zoning and went forward. So I think that's what I would say. I don't think staff was ever necessarily saying, hey, we're supportive of this. I think what we tried to do is say, our thought would be, if you're going to go at it, fight this battle one time and let's be done with it, and then let's move on. We'll get direction from council, and if that happens, then it's a smoother path from there.
And yet the problem is, if the city council decides, okay, this is fine for single-family residents, you have absolutely no way of stopping the next person from applying the same standards.
So I want to be clear, Councilman, because I don't know that our intent was to say, if you do this, all bets are off and everything, and you know, because again, staff would be the first one to say, you have to take every project and consider it on its own particular merits, the particular factors relative to that project, all of the different things that go in terms of the location, the designation, adjacent zoning, adjacent land uses, impact from topography, availability of there are a whole lot of factors. So again, you've often, I would say, and I certainly can be corrected again, that, you know, council has had a lot of concern, and P&Z of, do we set precedent? And you've often heard staff say, This doesn't necessarily set precedent. You've got to consider those each one. I think what staff was trying to reference in that report so that P&Z and council understood is we are getting a lot of requests for development in southern Schertz. And I think from our perspective, we do have, I think we're at this point, unless you heard staff last time I was up and presented saying, yeah, we need to update our comp plan, we need to update our UDC, because I think times change, things change, desires change. And so you're right, we heard from a lot of folks back in the sector plan going, we want to keep it rural, but development kept occurring, and then people started getting developers showing up going, here's what your land worth if I can put 7,000 square foot lots on it. And they said, okay, well, it's time to go. And I can appreciate that. Much the same way with the UDC need to be updated. Again, you reference council's decision with regard to lot size. And again, this is something that I will say staff tries to watch P&Z and council decisions, and we try not to sort of stay coming back the same thing over and over. We really watch your decisions. We try to take bits from it. And so what I would say staff has seen over time is there seems to be a move from council of we need to pull back on some of the regulations that understand the intent behind that, but at some point we can over-regulate, never get what we want to pull back. Sheds is a good example. There was a lot of pride taken, as you said, Mayor, of we're not going to allow small lot zoning, to the point that council actually amended the ordinance to say we cannot grant these zoning districts anymore. And Mr. Dollar may remember this, and Councilman Scagliola may remember this, where we got up and did a bunch of presentations and said, hey, it's not all about lot size, it's about development form and this and that and integration. And so we started doing planned development districts as a way to allow some lots that, frankly, council had said we're not going to allow by straight zoning. And again, what we have heard over the last 3-4 years is where the push had been to say we want bigger lots. Again, I'll go back. Schertz has 10-foot side yard setbacks. Most communities have a 5-foot side yard setback. That's a standard. If you want to talk about a regulation that really impacts cost and affordability, it's that extra 5 feet either side. And so all of those regulations go into play. And so what we've tried to do is, as we've heard council say, look, we've kind of priced ourselves out. I mean, again, you've heard me talk about SCUC ISD, new single-family home in Schertz and SCUC ISD. It's $290,000 almost. That's incredibly expensive. A lot of folks can't afford that. And so there are a lot of things that need to happen to bring about affordability and change in regulation. And the more council talks about it, I think staff's perspective is that's going to be a big element if we update the comp plan to say, look, we want to do it right, but we need to provide affordability. We need to have a community that's sustainable and fits and going forward. And so I will say I think staff does kind of watch these things and go from there. And so staff's real position on this was, look, let's just have this now at comp plan, and if council approves it, then zoning's much easier. Let's make it the best it can be and move it forward. And again, I think there are a lot of elements that are very good with this. There's some things we probably need to tweak and change, and again, some they'll push back on, some they'll go, yeah, we can do that, that's fine. So it's not that staff is opposed to the vision here. If you ask me, I'd say I think this is the direction we're heading. You know, we talked about that. We had those conversations, ironically, where staff said, you know, maybe we ought to look at going lower density down south of Randolph by the ACUs and increase our density over here. And we just never quite got there because at the time there was a feeling that we didn't want to do that. And so what we actually ran was we left this part out because there was not a desire to make that change at the time. So kind of where we are. But I hope that sort of helps.
I think you've been real consistent in your decisions, and it is consistent with the vision that we had established. One of the things, and I hate to monopolize, but for single-family residents, if we were to put an R number on this, because this is more of a mixed-use type concept that I'm looking at here, if we were to actually label this with an R number, what size lots would we be using? So it would get, seeing as how we did away with the R5 and R7s and whatnot.
So it would get different Rs. There are different elements, and I'll have to look to Nick to help me out because I never can quite remember. But as I recall, what typically we have is the smallest, if you came in and said, let me do straight zoning, just want to go straight zoning, you don't want to mess with the PDD, it's 8,400 square feet. 70s and 80s are fine.
Right.
And so if you walk in and say, hey, I just want to go straight zoning, don't want to argue PDD, 70 and 80 foot wide. And so from their perspective.
And then there's also supposed to be an overall average.
They've got.
They wanted to put in smaller lot sizes, right?
So what they've got is, they've got 51 lots that meet that requirement. The rest of the lots are below that. What we've typically done, and again, I don't know the numbers and don't data, and we've talked about it is, and developers kind of learn this, is we kind of go with, look, let's get a median and a mean lot size of 8,400 square feet. And so it's, again, it tries to balance that mix. But again, that's not set in stone. If council says, you know, why do we hang on to that median mean 8,400? We can make adjustments to that. But that's typically what we've used is a median and a mean. And what that does is if you've got some really big lots, typically that back up and are real deep, it doesn't skew your average, and I certainly hesitate with Councilwoman Scott and Councilman Scagliola to get too much into averages, median, means, and modes, because I'll speak wrong and you can correct me, but we use the median and mean to try to say, hey, what we're really talking is kind of broadly speaking on average, as an incorrect generically used term, this is kind of what we want to be. Balance out the bigger ones with the smaller ones, and in the end get a project. But that's not to say the right, because again, I think we've done that, and we have that home value of 290,000 square feet. And so if we want to bring that down to make it more affordable, we've got to look at making some adjustments with it. So again, we've got to look at the amenities that are provided. I think they're certainly an appropriate amount. You've heard staff talk about, let's not over-amenitize it, because the residents can't afford to pay for that stuff down the road, and that becomes problematic. So it's a balancing act. Again, project's perfectly fine. Ours is this technical issue of the comp plan that staff said, and thus we said, let's try to settle it here.
By looking at the mean, the median, and mode, you're looking at it about 60 feet. It's square in the middle.
And to be clear,
264 homes.
I don't know, and I'm certainly if the applicant tells me we have, I don't know that we've gotten into that level where we've run the calculations, because typically what we do is they actually provide us a table with the smallest lot to the largest. They're numbered. We can see where that middle one falls. We can look at the averages and see the math. I don't doubt we've done this. But I would say if the applicant has said the average lot size is 8,434, I have no reason to doubt that that's not accurate. I see where Councilman Scagliola is coming, that it seems like we're smaller. Now, I will say this, you've heard staff talk about this. When we run zoning, that's a minimum. And so often the lots end up being bigger. Instead of being 50 by 120, they're 52 by 127 or something like that. They can't go below, but they often go above, and that tends to pull the median and the mean up, even though the zoning might imply it would be smaller. And I think that's probably what the case is here.
Just one more question.
Mm-hmm.
If this is disapproved, then it goes back to the drawing board. What benefits could we possibly see between what is now and what could be?
So honestly, Councilman, I'm going to kind of go back to this, and probably not the answer you were expecting, and this is going to seem contradictory. Again, what staff assumes is that if council were to deny this tonight and say, look, we're not willing to make the change now, we've not heard anybody, staff, P&Z, or really council say this is a bad layout and this is bad for the community. It's been this technical issue of the comp plan. And so if you denied it, and the applicant said, oh, great, there's a missed opportunity, we move on, and we move forward with a comp plan amendment, if I were to bet y'all, whatever you'd like to bet, a soda, a beer, whatever it is, would not surprise me that what we get from a comp plan update is something that says we want more suburban style development on this side of 1518. Let's go lower density over by Randolph because of those issues there, and that we get it, and they're kind of going, man, if you guys had been a year and a half ahead, we'd be good. That's what I think. I mean, that's what we're hearing, because again, a lot of property owners in these areas are coming back wanting increased density, increased development. We've talked a lot about the need for affordable housing, more affordable housing, and if we're going to do that, where do we do it? there's some challenges with that because, again, I think there are reasons council said, let's not do the small lots anymore. That maybe isn't what we want to do. So we've got to figure out how we work it. And again, what staff ironically has presented is, let's try to do these larger developments with a variety of lot sizes rather than a sea of all uniform monotonous lot sizes. We think that's more sustainable. So again, that's how the process would typically work. I mean, technically, they can come back in with zoning, but I think they would say, as we did, if you denied the comp plan amendment, you're not going to approve the zoning. Likely, if you've said, hey, let's approve the comp plan amendment, you've set that in motion and say, let's bring about the proposal.
Now, just one more thing. Planning and zoning, pretty much hands are tied. They need to go by what's on the books as written, correct?
No, Councilman, I would say this respectfully. I will offer this, that what they had in front of them was a comprehensive plan amendment. And so they have certainly the ability to say yes or to say no. It is a discretionary item as long as they can find a basis to do that. So no, I don't think their hands were necessarily tied. I will say, though, that I think the planning and zoning commissions, in my opinion, tend to be a bit more cautious. Much like staff sort of looks to council and tries to interpret policy direction, I think the planning and zoning commission does that as well. And so I think likely they took a more conservative position, said, hey, we're going to err on the side of caution, in my opinion. If council is comfortable stepping out, so be it. We're just not necessarily comfortable stepping out with it. That's my opinion of what I think the thought process was. I think there was also some discussion that some of them remember the comp plan process and very much understand that this is a small sample and you've got a lot of people with a lot of very strong opinions. Council can remember when we've talked about acquiring easements down here, and some of the reaction we got of people saying, we don't want this, we don't want development, we want it raw. We'll get that again, and that's just part of the process. So.
It's interesting. I generally do not like going against the decisions of the planning and zoning. But if there's, if we're talking about, I don't know, basic ideas about what is now and what should be in the future, and it seems like it was a half a dozen of one, six of another as to which way it could have gone. And that's pretty much why I'm torn.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, again, I think, as I said, I think P&Z tends to be a bit more conservative. I think staff does as well. We look for council for direction. Again, as I said earlier, kind of in respect to the mayor's comments, I think staff meant to apply as this opens up everything to anything. But I think what staff does do is it says council is more comfortable with typical suburban down in southern Schertz as opposed to this mixed-use thing that the plan laid out, and that aren't necessarily wanting to hold every property owner to this very rural 5 units per acre. So I think that's what staff was trying to say, is that it does kind of mean this shift, and we'll keep that in mind, as I think council would like us to. Don't keep coming back with the same thing and us telling you no. Take what we say and kind of move it forward.
So this one's kind of skirting the edges. It's a good plan. It looks good. On the other hand,
so Councilman, I would say this: there's no good and bad. You tend not to hear me talk about good versus bad. Everything has implications to it. And so there were implications to doing small lot, which is why council made the change and say, let's not grant anything below a certain size. But if we don't have rooftops, we don't get the commercial. Everything has implications, and you just need to go into it eyes wide open and understand some of the implications. And again, a benefit of this that staff looks, look, the more lots you've got, the less issue we have with rough proportionality issue of roadway construction or things like that. There are pros and cons to it. I mean, it works both ways.
I apologize for taking them so much time, Mayor.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's where you got all the time. Councilmember Hayward.
I just wanted to know the square footage of the garden homes. roughly?
And I can certainly let the applicant speak to that. Just to be clear, this is a comp plan amendment. The zoning would dictate the lot size. We also do not regulate the size of the units coming back in, but he can certainly speak to the anticipated lot size.
It was just a curiosity.
So right now, the garden homes are sized at 50 by 120 lots. So,
The square footage of the home that would be on.
oh, the homes,
Rough.
hold on.
Just a curiosity. If you don't have it, that's fine.
2,000 there.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, but I believe it's around 2,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Brown?
Again, going back to the basic premise of tonight's discussion, is we are not changing the entire sector plan. We are changing this development from the agricultural conservation and mixed use to the single-family residential. This is a nice plan. It doesn't mean that the whole east side of 1518, south of 78 to 10 is going to become this. Okay? But it's a good plan. You know, it looks good. It's got nice variety. Like I say, if we do something that's quality, it makes sense. All right? And, you know, as far as affordable housing, this is too nice of a neighborhood for that. The garden homes are not for member families. Those are probably going to be people that are downsizing from larger lots because there's zero lot lines, smaller lots, things like that. And there's a great desire for that in the area. So, you know, that variety again, mixed or in the neighborhood is really nice. But back to the basic premise of changing it from the mixed use neighborhood and agricultural to the single family for this development, I'm not against that. I would also hope that we would be able to do a little bit more delving into the whole community again, taking a relook at what's going on down there instead of trying to do things parcel by parcel, neighborhood by neighborhood.
Councilmember Dollar?
Just to clarify, with updating the sector plan, though, we would also basically have another crack at it when it comes in for zoning and for the PDD, that if something changed our minds, that, you know, we still have another option to say no.
Wow, I'm gonna anger everybody on council. Wow, and I risk another a night like tonight. So what staff would say when it comes back is if you approve the comp plan amendment, if what they provide is consistent with the comp plan amendment, you need to approve it. We're going to recommend approval, and you may stand up here and go some way out like this, and you're pounding on staff. What are y'all doing? I mean, but that's what staff would say. So I don't mean to make that too. I will say this, certainly, as I said, we'll go back. The big battle is, or the big decision is tonight. You know, there's certainly some things that need to tweak. If you look at the number of, and some of this is pretty straightforward, the number of connections to this large property. Again, floodplain really precludes a lot of access coming through here. You've got multiple properties that have to cross here. What we would typically look at is do 2 points of access to that property. So however they came and develop, even 5-acre lots, they can kind of control their own destiny. You've got to have, per the UDC that council had passed, 2 points of access into every subdivision. So there's some things like that we would likely tweak. You know, we would probably have some conversations about this alley-loaded product. There are a lot of benefits to that. Schertz traditionally has not done it for a variety of reasons. As I've heard, it's maintenance costs, but a lot of places I've done have done it. But that does create some particular parking challenges because there is not a driveway on an alley-loaded product for folks to park. And I will say our community has been extremely sensitive to that, much like they're sensitive to chip seal and much like they're sensitive to speeding in neighborhoods. And I'm truly not mocking that. I mean, we have these issues for us. Parking on the street is a big one we deal with a lot. And so there's some tweaks we get, but those are tweaks saying, how do we make this the best of what it is, not how do we fundamentally change it? So.
And yeah, the parking, on-street parking issue back in the day was the big driver on reducing the R6 and R7 elimination.
There's a lot of it.
That was a big driver on that, and I agree with Dr. Scaglioli on that, is that I certainly don't support entitlement by right on the smaller lot sizes. However, again, to balance the cost and affordability, because the lot cost is driven by the width of the lot.
Agree with you entirely.
So we have to have a place where we can have smaller lots that does drive down the price of the homes. So just a couple other points. We had back on February 6, 2017 and February 12, 2019, we had about 50 people show up at council from the Bexar County portion of Schertz, asking for council to look at updating the sector plan. Both council staff acknowledged their desires, and even we started that process of that sector plan that we've also talked about. And that also was initiated by the J-Luce recommendations that came out to have one house per 10 acres on the east side of Randolph, or even one house per 20 acres, depending on where you were on the APZ zone. And the idea when we initiated the J-Luce, the conversations that we had on planning and zoning, was that the idea is that we were going to flip-flop the density of the development down there to have the less dense on the west side in the APZ zone and look at allowing more dense on the east side to have something that was going to generate a tax base that we could support. And, that update was put on hold for several reasons. Funding, manpower, availability is probably the major drivers on that. And we're kind of holding on that.
So if I may, Councilman, just for what it's worth, I think after the J-Luce and the change in the J-Luce, staff came back and said, hey, we need to relook at our comp plan on the west side of 1518, south of Randolph. At the time, I think initial conversation staff said, we're also getting all this pressure from the east side to go the opposite. So maybe what's more appropriate if we want to keep this rural and we want to allow development is this idea of flipping it. I think there was not necessarily support, or staff didn't get the indication there was support for that, and so thus we just ran a comp plan amendment for the west side, to be clear, and then that I think we struggled to get consensus on, and it bogged down.
So a couple more points. It's one of the many repeated conversations that we have is about our demographics. I have that conversation a lot of times with a lot of people. And, one of the things that I've learned is that we have, two of the three things that the retail business community is looking for. We have the high educational levels, and we have the disposable income levels that are highly sought after. However, we don't have the population. And as a submarket, the Bexar County portion of the city, it's both the largest in the land area at 41%, but it's also the lowest in population. We have, according to our GIS department, 4,976 residents. That may have changed this last week or so, but in general, we're talking 5,000 people down there. That's not going to support any retail. And honestly, I can't think of any other topic, that being the lack of retail service, that's the source of more conversation with my neighbors down there, both in person and on media, other than the widening of 1518. The solution is to grow that population in a meaningful manner that fits the needs of the community. And among that is affordability, and it definitely is a valid discussion point. Brian, you mentioned the SCUC demographic report. The first quarter report shows the median new price home in Schertz is actually $296,393. So we're almost $300,000. When you go drive around in the southern part of the city down there, most of those subdivisions are now well north of 350. Crossvine has homes now that regularly are closing in over 500. It's a price point that's out of reach of the majority of the population. Certainly anybody that's going to be a teacher, one of our staff members or a police officer. With prices in the 220s, that might even still be a struggle for those people beginning their careers, but at least it's something that they might have a shot at. This proposed project, it's going to bring a lot of things to our city that I think are a benefit. It's going to bring housing stock that we currently don't have, the town home, garden home concept. We just don't have that product. Crossvine is looking at bringing it in, but their proposed price point that they've talked about is about $100,000 more than what these are going to be. It's a different style of single-family home with the deeper setbacks. It would put more cars in the driveway and get them off the street and reduce some of the parking issues. Almost 5.5 acres of parkland, which will be owned and maintained by the HOA. They're looking at about 2.4 miles of trails and trail connections to the future intermediate school site. When you add the trails that will be along, or sidewalks along FM 3009 extension, we're talking about 3.5 miles worth of trails. The connections with Rhine Valley, that's going to allow children to walk, ride, or bike to school without having to cross a major arterial road from kindergarten through 8th grade. That's really a unique proposition. You know, we don't have that anywhere. Most cities don't have something like that where kids can walk or bike to school, you know, for their first 8 years of school without having to ride on a bus. They've incorporated some of the curvy linear street designs that we want and we see in many subdivisions. And I think it's looking at being the most affordable price point probably in all the southern Schertz. And I think it's fitting for the area. It's appropriate for Schertz.
Okay, Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, right now, we're just talking about the zoning on this particular property. They will have to come back with basic plans and things, because you were talking about the two entrances and exits. I'm talking to Mr. James, by the way. They will have to come back and you know, talk about the connectivity within this subdivision to actually abide by Schertz policies of entrances and exits and things.
So there were two things. One is they would have to come back for zoning. The zoning, they could go straight zoning,
okay,
not have a plan attached. They would simply then have to meet the requirements for subdivision design associated with that. Likely what they'll do, I think, is come back in with a PDD that'll attach the layout. I just want to be clear. But yeah, I think the anticipation is a PDD typical to what you see, which, yes, that would mean council would review that in the future.
All right. That's all I have, sir. And
any other council? I have a couple of things I want to add. Sector plan, page 9. This sector plan provided 3 major goals regarding growth capacity. Goal 1 was enact policies that will allow Schertz to grow as necessary, and this is an opportunity. Goal number 2, promote infill development as an alternative to continue to spar away from the heart of Schertz. There is limited space in North Schertz for residential housing, and eventually growth will happen in South Schertz. The question is when. Goal number 3, require development to be designed in a way that follows the principles of smart growth. As we mentioned before, smart growth is not thinking about the land as a smart way to approach. Smart growth in the sector plan refers to a compact community. And this sector plan actually designated the intersection of 1518 and Lower Seguin as smart growth, not this area. Another one is sector plan, page 58, section 8.4. Challenges of South Schertz could make it difficult to attract any type of development that the community desires. Council, Schertz has attracted a developer, which brings us to this point. Sector plan, page 15, section 3, item B. South Schertz, the South Schertz area generally is similar to North Schertz. It's just undeveloped. If you appreciate the value and the conditions of North Schertz, why not start the process for South Schertz? Sector plan, page 57, section 8.3, item A. Commercial development will eventually follow as rooftops are added to the area. You have to ask yourself, why would any business invest or take a risk in South Schertz if the demographics provide a challenge? Today, an opportunity has surfaced to spark an interest in commercial development. And finally, as Mr. Tareen had mentioned, the sector plan executive summary. The primary objective of this plan is not to be considered a static document, but rather a continuous process. The plan is intended to be reviewed on a regular basis and updated as needed to maintain its applicability to current conditions and the priorities of this community. The plan also states it should be flexible to address changes in market conditions. The market conditions have changed. The question is, are we flexible? You know, the sector plan actually provided more rationale for the approval than the approval of this amendment. So in my final words, in 1994, FM 3009 was a two-lane road. The Schertz Parkway connection to I-35 did not exist. Single-family residential housing, Dove Meadows, Wilson Preserve, Mesa Oaks, Jonas Woods, Ashley Park, Kramer Farms, Belmont, Riata, Arroyo Verde, the Fairway, Cypress Point did not exist. There was no Walmart, H-E-B, Lowe's, fast food, McDonald's wasn't here, Whataburger wasn't here, limited banks, limited gas stations, car washes, and no chicken eating establishments. Council, the day has come for council to determine the vision of South Schertz. Any other comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 20S16.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Scagliola, second by Councilmember Dalla. Council, any other comments? Now let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Councilman Scott, did you vote? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right, we'll go down to roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide roll call confirmation vote on action item number 1, consent agenda items number 2, 3, and 5 through 12, and discussion items number 4, 13, and 14. Ms. Dennis?
Yes, Mayor. Item number 1, resolution number 20R59. Motion was made by Councilmember Haber, seconded by Councilmember Brown. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no, motion passed. Consent agenda items 2, 3, 5 through 12. Motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no, motion passed. Item number 4, resolution number 20R66. A motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. Councilmember Scott voted no. Motion passed. Item number 13, ordinance number 20S17 on first reading. A motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 14, ordinance number 20S16, first reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Scagliola, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmember Scott, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. We'll move on to our workshop discussion. An update on ordinance number 20H18, discussion and update regarding the COVID-19 virus, and our current ordinance number 20H18, declaration of local disaster. Chief Long?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Hey, again, just wanted to come in this evening and kind of provide you with some of the latest numbers. So Guadalupe County added a few more cases over the past few days, so that puts us at 160 in Guadalupe County. We had one more recovered yesterday and added one more today in Schertz, so that puts us at 26 total, but we're down to 4 active cases in Schertz right now. So that's kind of the update on our numbers. Again, we've talked about Silver Tree before, but autumn winds did get back the results, and they were all negative at this time, so that was good news to get back. City services, just kind of giving a quick update on that. So June 8th, our playgrounds opened back up, Pickerel Park Pool, Aquatic Center, and so on June 15th is when we're planning on opening the Civic Center back up for rentals. And then again, we've just got here possibly TB determined, but looking at July 1st for kind of fully opening the library back up and the park pavilions. We're still looking at, again, just still working through not having the numbers in place with Windy Swan, so we left that on there as a not yet determined. Senior Center, so we're just updating on that we're looking at starting to talk about some dates and stuff in Phase 4 once we move out of Phase 3 and feel that's appropriate time to start looking at that when we move into Phase 4. For the Senior Center, still will continue lunch right now, 11:30 to 12:30, Monday through Friday. Some of the governor come out with, like I said, new Phase 3 openings, so I just kind of listed all those here to run through quick some of the changes. So any occupancy that was deemed an essential business prior to doesn't have any occupant limits now. Local government, religious services, child care, youth camps, and recreational sports for adult and kids were also added to the Phase 3 list. Additional things that went to up to 50%, kind of all-encompassing list here, but gyms, including the locker rooms being able to open now, water parks, swimming pools were able to go up to 50% as well. Some additional ones, they put youth clubs on here, can operate or have meetings now at a 50% occupant reduction. And some of the other things mentioned in the order worth looking at was outdoor events. Over 500 they put at a local decision. And again, bowling alleys, movie theaters move up to 50%. And video game facilities like Evos can now start operating. So the 50% occupancy does not apply if there's 6 feet between the workstations, but this is talking about cosmetology, salons, massage establishments, some of the personal care services as well. Got updated a little bit in this latest Phase 3. And then last week again, June 3rd, all businesses expanded to 50%, bars went to 50%, and restaurants could expand their table size from 6 of a party to 10. June 12th is when restaurants will be able to expand to 75% occupancy load. And June 19th is when amusement parks and carnivals will get to open at 50%. And then this here is just a quick picture we had talked about at the budget retreat that we had. We were adding some temp check stations, so this has been set up in the front of Building 1 now. So we're still finishing the setup process. IT is still working through some of the setup process for that at this time, but that's capturing everybody's temperature when they come in Building 1. This is also installed in the front of the library for whenever it opens back up. And that's pretty much a quick run-through of our numbers and where we're at and what our current situation is. So,
Thank you, Chief. Council, questions? No questions. Thank you, Chief. We'll continue with requesting announcements. Announcements by our city manager, Dr. Brown. Okay. Any possible items that council wants on future agendas? None? Okay. Announcements by council members. Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
I had the Housing Authority meeting last night, and for those of you who don't know, Benedict, the director, is soon to retire from there. The Housing Authority Board is working on a transition plan to ensure that the Schertz Housing Authority has appropriate leadership and management as it goes forward. And as soon as I get more details, I'll send something out to everybody.
Councilmember Scott?
No, Mayor.
Councilmember Larson?
I've got a real long list here. Just kidding, I don't have anything.
Councilmember Dalla?
Nothing attended. I just want to say thank you to staff for the good policy discussion this evening. I know some of my longest meetings on P&Z, and in a weird way, enjoyable meetings were the policy discussions, and thank you for that. Let's keep it going.
All right. Councilmember Scagliola?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Councilmember Hayward?
Yes, Mayor. I am part of the Chamber Leadership Corps class of 2020, and today we had our first physical meeting, and so in that meeting we went to the Commissioner's Court and 2 nonprofits. We went to the Connections Individuals and Families tour in New Braunfels to see that they take care of teenagers that are runaways or fosters that had to be removed from a home, and that's a temporary location for 90 days, and then went and took a tour of RACAP, and so it was a good full day for me. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Brown?
Nothing tonight?
Okay. I don't have any further comments. The time is now 9:08. We stand adjourned.